like to call the March 13th, 2018 meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council to order. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Please call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Friedman. Here. Councilmember Dominguez. Here. Mayor Protem Rouse. Here. Councilmember Hart. Here. Councilmember Sneddon. Here. Mayor Murillo.
Here. Thank you so much. Any changes to the agenda, Mr. Administrator?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, good. We'll start with public comment. And Wayne Scholes, you're up first. Come on up. You'll be followed by Pete Del Bello.
I'm here today to talk about something I've been talking about for almost 30 years, and that's lack of enforcement of the laws in this town. I spoke to the chief last time I was here and told her, and I'd like to tell her again, if you are being told, and the police are being told to not enforce the laws in this town because they don't want the tourists to have a negative experience, the public needs to know about it so we can get rid of these people. I am sick and tired of taking my life in my hands, crossing the street. I very seldom ride a bicycle anymore because I got ran down and lost a knee. The last time you hired this so-called expert, it was 8 months after I got hit and I wasn't even up there. So let me tell you something. Lies and excuses are never solutions to a problem. They're just lies and excuses so you don't have to stand up and be a leader. A leader is not appointed. You are a leader by example. Unfortunately, we've had 3 mayors now that are more butt kisser than butt kicker. And the only thing that changes for a butt kisser is the flavor of the butt they're currently kissing. We need to clean this town up. We need to make the public the #1 interest of everybody in government, not the tourists, not the bums that are running around this town, scaring the hell out of people, causing merchants to lose tons of business. This has been going on forever, and all we hear is excuses, excuses, excuses. Somebody needs to stand up, grow some you-know-what, and start taking some action. It's not going to be easy, but if you want an easy job, don't be in that position. We are sick of it. As member of the public and representing thousands of other people that come to me and say, Wayne, we need your help trying to get this done. We are sick and tired of calling the police and them not showing up. We are sick and tired of talking to the police saying, hey, what about this guy breaking the law? Well, you have to call dispatch. Oh, you have to wait for the meter maids to show up.
Your time is up, Mr. Scholes.
We need enforcement, and you also need to change this stupid little 2 minutes to at least 3. And you also need to change it to after dinner so that the public can be properly represented.
Everybody gets 2 minutes, Mr. Scholes.
Unless they're kissing your butt.
You need to wrap it up. Okay.
Unless they're kissing your butt. I've seen it with Snyder. I see it with Marty Bloom, and I see it now. And I remember when you could not say a single word.
You're going beyond your 2 minutes, and you're kind of using language that might be offensive to people. So be careful.
Well, that's too bad. You know what? The founders of this country used language that was offensive to the British.
I'm saying we want to hear your message. Thank you. Pete Del Bello, come on up. You have 6 minutes because Jose Arturo Gallegos and Michael Miranda are giving you time. And then after that is Michael Cox. So 6 minutes, Mr. Del Bello.
Okay. Madam Mayor and City Council, my name is Pete Del Bello. I am a Santa Barbara native, and so nice to see the rain and hopefully be nice and calm. We won't have any damage because I know the Elmo, the cat next door, was looking up, didn't know what the heck was going on. So another intellectual wizard in our city. But anyways, because of the rain, the curb is clean on Coda Street, and even though there's still a lot of debris, as I mentioned recently, I don't know how the curbs are going to be cleaned and the debris near the curbs at the Coda Street bike lane, because the poles of the bike lane, you can't get to the curb. So I know there's, the master plan has not been fully mastered, but I know there's some kinks need to be worked out. But I do have some positive things you'll be happy to know. because I am trying to listen to Councilman Hart to look at the glass half full. I'm trying to, though my glass is usually empty, but I am trying. And, but I want to compliment the mayor and council on two things. That I'm happy the city is moving forward on a plan to widen the State Street sidewalks underneath the Highway 101 overpass. I want to thank you for looking into that. And I'm so excited about this. This is on Melpas Street. That the council voted 6-0 to designate as a city landmark the Live Oak Dairy building at 901 North Melpas Street. And I know Councilwoman Sneddon, she's a Dawn like I am, so she knows the importance of that building in the area. And just so the camera knows, everybody knows what it looks like. But, and no, I've never been up to the cow, even though they paint it, it's, but I wanted to mention that, and I'm glad that Josh Molina mentioned this because it's very important because I love Santa Barbara history in general, but especially Santa Barbara history, and that the Live Oak Dairy was designed in 1939 by Alexander C. D'Alfonso, who is a builder and contractor in Santa Barbara. He's actually a well-known builder and contractor, and he did very good work, and I know that's for a fact because the house that I have on Juana Maria is a D'Alfonso house. So it's an honor. It's an honor to, especially being an Italian, to live in a house built by someone of great distinction and of my heritage as well. So I wanted to compliment the city on those two things. And I also wanted to add real quickly, I don't like to complain, but the Victoria Street parking lot, they were not taking tickets at the, before, and I left there, I had to go to see a realtor before 10 o'clock on Friday. I had an appointment, I'm not selling my house, no worries. And, but there was nobody there to take the ticket. And I had a meeting, so I went out because I want to make sure I didn't go over my time. And because, I'm always concerned about time. I always keep it within my time frame here. And there was nobody there. And so, and my father was an accountant in this building, and he passed away years ago, but I know he would be upset, we could be losing potential revenue. So just to keep an eye on that. And unfortunately, I won't be here next week because I mentioned the parking problem on Juana Maria. Well, I have to get some tree work done, so that has to be on Tuesday. And it's an all-day job, and that's got to be Tuesday because on that side of the street, like I mentioned, there's street sweeping. So, and the tree man said, we have a lot of problems like this throughout the east side with parking. So just to let you know, unfortunately, as much as I love to be here, I always say it's my favorite day of the week because then I get to see the mayor and city council, and I know I deep down I enjoy coming here because like I've said, my parents worked in this building. I love this building. It's my favorite building in the whole city. But just to let you know that I know you'll all miss me next week, and of course I will miss all of you. Thank you for your time and kind attention, and thank you again for making the Live Oak Dairy a city landmark. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time and kind attention.
All right, thank you. Michael Cox, you'll be followed by Eloisa Chavez, and then Justin Pacos.
Okay, my
Mr.
name is Michael
go ahead.
Cox.
Yeah.
The reason I'm here is to talk about the Anacapa and Solis area. We had two small children a few weeks ago got hit by a car over in that area, and it's a bad spot because a lot of pedestrians are trying to cross, and the cars are speeding by there at high number of speeds. So I'm just here to see if there's any way we can try to figure out some way of getting a place to turn it safer into an area. So
You say Anacapa and Sola?
yes.
Very good. Our police chief is here taking notes, sir, so we'll follow up on that.
Okay, because it's like a concern, because last year we had a person who was killed over in that area, and now these two small children. So how many people are going to be in body bags because of that street? So we need to figure out some way of working it to get it improved. So thank you.
Thank you. Eloisa Chavez, Justin Pacos, and then Brenda Canfer, or Carter. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to our mayor in the last or almost 3 years that I have known her. She has been a champion for causes in the community, has done a lot for women's rights and environmental and climate causes, local efforts to prevent food insecurity, and supporting the Latino community in their volunteer efforts. I've seen her at many rallies, many marches, even barbecues supporting the community. And I think that it's a wonderful opportunity to know that she has made herself so available to the community and to so many of the constituents in this area. While I was at the food bank, she had supported a lot of the causes that we tried, that we were moving on the west side when she was in Horola City Council. And when she was and even more recently, we had a Promotores celebration, and I asked Kathy if she would be able to attend, and I just wanted to give my sincerest thank you for attending, and then not only attending but supporting the cause and giving them a real podium to shine. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of members in the Latino community haven't really had in the past. And knowing that these women are coming from other countries, hardly speaking the language, is really wonderful for them to have that opportunity. So I know that you've been doing your best in the community, and I just want to say that in the volunteer efforts that I've had made, and with Planned Parenthood, with the food bank, with the Promotores Network, that I just wanted to say my sincerest thank you for all that you have done and all that you have been trying to do.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And you too. I love your work in the community. Thanks, Eloisa.
Thank you.
Chavez. Thanks. Justin? Sorry, Justice? I'm sorry. Welcome.
Madam Mayor, council members, members of the public. My name is Justice Paddocks, and I'm currently studying religious studies at Westmont College. A group of Westmont students have chosen to spend their week partnering with SB ACT to serve the greater community in learning about and interacting with it. One of the foci of our interactions has been reaching out to the marginalized and homeless. We thank you for your persistent efforts to preserve their right to the pursuit of happiness and the dignity of the marginalized and unseen. We understand the difficulty intrinsic in balancing the oversimplification of such a complex topic as poverty with a proper stress on justice, while maintaining the right to the pursuit of happiness for all, seen and perhaps sometimes by some unseen. But we thank you for your efforts and honor you for your work, while nevertheless all the while urging you to stay aware of and involved with those who need your help to access such basic necessities as food and shelter. God bless you all, and thank you.
Thank you. Brennan? Is that a T or an F? Canfer? Cantor? Confer? Go ahead. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, council members, members of the public, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Brennan Confer, and I'm a freshman behavioral neuroscience and economics and business double major at Westmont College. As Justice has previously stated, I am here with Spring Break in the City, Santa Barbara, a week-long commitment to discovering this city's history and the problems within it. Those of us who chose to be in this program did so out of a desire to get to know this city better and to understand how we can use our college years to best impact this community as Christian believers. Today, we got to know the local homeless community better by handing out dry socks on State Street. From speaking with homeless, I've seen that many have a surprisingly positive view of the police force as kind and not aggressive, and acknowledge the city's attempts to aid them. However, they feel a disconnect between the city's understanding of their needs and the reality they face every day. I encourage those of you who wish to see these people able to move off of the streets to take a moment to have a conversation with any one of these people. All have eye-opening stories and a strong desire for any form of human contact. nothing other than personal contact to properly express the reality they face every day. Thank you again for your service and efforts to improve this community.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Eva Medina, come on up. You're our final speaker. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thank you so much. I want to say thank you so much for your help for our work, for help to open the ways to find that work with other agencies. And I'm representing Santa Barbara Country Promotor Networks. It's a pleasure to me to say thank you personally. Thank you so much for your work. Thanks.
Thank you. You do good work, and they had a great party, too. I have to admit, I had fun at your event, so thanks. Okay, that closes public comment for today. Madam Clerk, are there items to read from the consent calendar?
Item number 2, subject introduction of ordinance for amendment to lease number 25105 with High Sierra Grill Santa Barbara, Inc. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving an amendment to lease agreement number 25105 between the city and High Sierra Grill Santa Barbara, Inc. to extend temporary rent relief over a 12-month period. Item number 3, subject adoption of an ordinance for a supplemental lease agreement with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the waterfront director to execute a supplemental lease agreement, extending the lease term an additional 3 years with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration located at 113 Harbor Way, commencing on June 1, 2018.
Okay, and no one needs to pull a consent item? If there's no further objection, we'll waive further reading. Mr. Hart?
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Is there a second? A second from Mr. Friedman. All in favor? Aye. No opposed? Very good. That carries unanimously. The next item is item number 9.
Item number 9, subject presentation from the Wolf Museum of Exploration and Innovation.
We'll take a moment to set up. Thanks. You're ready?
I am. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, council members, for inviting me here today. My name is Robin Goza, and I am proud to be the new CEO of MOXIE, the Wolf Museum of Exploration and Innovation. I joined the MOXIE team in November, and I'm very proud to be there. I'm also new to the Santa Barbara community, having relocated my family here from Austin, Texas. So I am very excited to be a part of the community, and I'm very excited to be a part of MOXIE. And as you may realize, MOXIE just celebrated its 1-year anniversary. February 25th marks the museum being open for a full year. And I've got some highlights that I would like to share with you today to let you know all about MOXIE's success in the first year and what some of our plans are for the future. Rather than me speaking right now about all of the highlights, I wanted to show you actually a very quick video. It's only about 60 seconds, but it's a lot of fun. So we'll show you this, and then I'll dive in a little bit deeper into some data and some metrics and some fun stories from the museum's first year.
Great. We love videos.
Oh, whoops. We don't need to see it again. It was so good that we need to see it again, right? So hopefully you saw some of your friends, neighbors, family members, and maybe even yourself in those video clips from the past year. It really has been a tremendous year for this museum. We have welcomed over 175,000 guests in the first year, far exceeding our initial projections. So we have had a tremendous response from the community, both local and tourists from out of town. So we have been also pleased to have over 5,000 member households, and hopefully some people here in the audience today are members of the museum as well, enjoying free admission throughout the year and other special events as members. We also are a destination for schools, where we see close to 10,000 students a year coming in on field trips and to explore some different field trip programs that we offer. And about 40% of our students do come from Title I schools, from Santa Barbara County and also some from Ventura County. In addition to our school programs that we offer during the year, we also offer spring break camp and summer camp. We've offered some after-school programs as well. So after our first year, we are now kind of looking within the community to see what additional programs the community may want and may need for kids. We really serve a broad age range from toddlers all the way through adults. With our camp programs, that tends to be focused more on the elementary school years, first grade through sixth grade. But Moxie's not just a place for kids. We are definitely a place where adults can come and have fun as well. Last year, we offered several after-party events where the museum was open just for 21 and over. We served drinks and would have live music and additional programming. Those events, some of you may know, would start to sell out online within minutes. We're pleased to offer those again this year, with our next one being in April. We're also seeing that need from the community where adults really just do want to come and play in the museum. So we're also starting something new this year called Twilight Time, where it's adult-only hours without serving the drinks and the extra programming and things like that, but it's just open hours for 18 and over. And then we're partnering with businesses in the Funk Zone to provide Moxie ticket holders with 2-for-1 drinks or, $1 off appetizers and things like that too. And what we've heard anecdotally is that some adults really appreciate having this, having Moxie as a date night alternative to just going out for dinner and drinks, that this is something else that they can do too, to add to their evenings. Other first-year highlights, we were very, very pleased and very proud to receive many different accolades from local as well as national magazines. So we've listed a few up here, but including, being in USA Today's top 10 list for best new attractions of 2017, and many others as well. And we continue to rate very high in kind of our social media as well, where TripAdvisor, Yelp reviews, things like that. People have great things to say about their experience at the museum, and that's what we like to hear. And that, of course, helps to drive additional people to come and visit our museum. We support our local community, too, by employing, actually, this says 44. We just had an update today. We have 46 full-time and part-time staff. We also have volunteers ranging from teenagers all the way through senior citizens. We have a new program this year, too, called Toddler Tuesdays. Remember, I mentioned that we are expanding our audience, and so we're now kind of bringing in that toddler crowd on Tuesday mornings, and those programs, story time and more developmentally appropriate activities, are facilitated by volunteers. We also are partnering with UCSB and the Graduate School of Education there. We launched a program in the fall, and we are excited to continue that program, where we've recruited adults. They may be already university students, or they may be people who are interested in pursuing a certificate in informal science education. And we call that the MAPS program. And it's a joint venture. They are getting course credit through UCSB Extension. They are getting on-the-job training and a paycheck from Moxie, and this group will then, at the end of an academic year, receive the certificate, which is really the only one of its kind in the U.S. We also like to engage with a lot of our other local service providers that are working with the children in our community. So here's just a list of some of the different ones. United Boys and Girls Club, I mentioned the university. Girl Scouts, we were lucky enough to have the CEO of National Girl Scouts come to visit Moxie last summer, where we launched our very own Moxie Girl Scout patch, which is featured there with our color wheel. And doing a lot to continue to be a museum that is accessible for all. So accessible for people from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, but also people with diverse needs and abilities. So we've been working quite a bit with the Braille Institute and some other people as well. There we go. And, throughout all of this, obviously the primary function of the museum is to be a place of learning and exploration and play. But we also offer our venue as a facility rental, too. Some of you may remember on the screen here is a picture of Honda when Honda launched one of their new motorcycles on the rooftop of Moxie. I'm sorry that I wasn't already living in Santa Barbara to see that. I bet that was very exciting. We've also hosted many weddings, corporate events, things like that, too. So we are very fortunate to also partner with the Hotel Californian on some of those events as well. We enjoy having them as a new neighbor. So what's new for 2018? This is going to be another exciting year for the museum. We have our innovation workshop, which is our maker space. We're excited to offer monthly themes in that space that have different weekly hands-on activities so that visitors of all ages can come in and enjoy and learn how to use some of the technologies that we have in there. Laser cutters, 3D printers, soldering irons, but also hot glue guns, scissors, things like that too. Learning just how to make and create and build all different kinds of things of their own imagination. Our interactive media track is also a fantastic area where we have rotating exhibits that are a really nice integration of arts and STEM, so the science, technology, engineering, and math. And we usually have 4 to 5 different artists come and make an installation in that space. We're excited this summer we'll have a virtual reality experience, and lots of really interesting things in there that rotate that really keep the experience fresh for our repeat visitors. And then here's just a smattering of some of the other things that we're doing too. We are also working this year, very excited to have a partnership with the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy, where students there are really creating exhibits that we will prototype on the floor of the museum so that the high school students are getting a real world experience to have a real world client who is providing them with actual design constraints and things like that, and also providing some mentoring from some of our staff so that they can create exhibits that are meaningful and robust enough to be on the museum floor for the public to enjoy. I mentioned the after parties, the adult events that are very popular, our spring break and summer camps that we are excited to enroll students in this summer. We're focusing this year on cardboard engineering and digital creativity. And so with that year in review and kind of a sneak peek into the year ahead, I invite the council to ask me any questions about the museum.
Well, I'll start with the question. You were able to join up with Puppet Palooza, right? In
Yes.
the workshop when I went and visited. Thank you for having me. And if people haven't had a tour yet, I know you would take our council members on a tour.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be happy to.
Good, yeah. So you were able to take a community event and incorporate it into your activities. So
We did. So February, the entire month-long theme in that innovation workshop was puppet making. So each week we would do different things. One week we made sock puppets. The next week we did marionettes. The next week we did shadow puppets. And we also did a stop-motion animation station as well. So lots of different ways to use puppets, and then we would tie it back to, with Puppet Palooza happening at the beginning of March, that it was kind of getting everybody excited for that event.
thanks, Ms. Goza. So Mr. Hart, then Mr. Friedman.
Well, I was impressed to see that you'd already exceeded your attendance goals for the year. What was the original projection that you were going to have in the way of attendance?
Well, for the first year, we thought that it would be around 120, and so we saw 175,000. And we're now closing in, I think by the end of March, like after spring break is over, I think we will have closed in on 200,000 visitors.
Thank you.
Mr. Friedman?
Well, I just want to thank you for being here today and sharing with the community how great Moxie is. My family has the family membership, and my 10-year-old had his birthday there last year, so having 10-year-olds being able just to be in a safe place where they can learn and just let them have a run of the mill for 2 hours and go next door, grab some pizza, and then come back and let them get their energy out was great. I did have a question on how you, when you have new exhibits that come in, because I know from time to time you have different exhibits. One was you partnered with the Alisphere at UCSB. What's your process for keeping, I guess, fresh exhibits that come in?
Well, thank you for asking. So the Alisphere was part of that interactive media track, the interactive media theater space that we have. So we work with Marco Pinter, who actually comes out of the UCSB Media Arts Technology program, and he is the curator for that space. So he is meeting with local artists and kind of trying to find the best fit for different art installations that can go into that space. So that's really our biggest changing area right now, where we're having things that are very noticeably different. But then we also have our exploration stations, which is not, it's not a new exhibit per se, but it's more of an activity or a demonstration cart that our staff and volunteers are interacting with the public on. So those come out, we staff those about 4 days out of the week or so, 4 or 5 days out of the week. And that way, as visitors come in, that they can have a different experience there, too, with those kind of new hands-on stations.
Very good. Mr. Dominguez?
Thank you for being here and for your presentation. Do you do any work with Westmont University?
We've not yet, but we're only 1 year in, and I've only been here for 4 months, so I would look forward to finding some new partners.
Just curious. And in particular, one of the things I'd look at, and I think one of the students said that he was studying behavioral economics or behavioral neuroscience. What are some of the outcomes that can be tracked? And I don't know if any of the youth groups you're working with locally, like the Boys and Girls Club, if you have ongoing programs, because I'd love to see you collect some data and do some research on what that might impact in terms of how long they stay in school, the results they have in school, their grades, whether they go into the STEM fields. Is that something you guys have looked at?
Well, we have definitely been doing some research in the museum itself, looking more at how visitors are engaging with the exhibits that we have. So we are looking at sort of how long they're staying at certain exhibits, but also how complex different systems they're building. Like I'm thinking about our Roll It wall, which is where you build the roller coaster, the marble roller coaster. And so as we kind of can study how complex a system they're building, then we can sort of learn from that kind of how deeply the children are engaging in critical thinking and creative problem solving. As far as some of those longer-term outcomes, that would be something where we would need to partner with, a particular school, or maybe partner more with some of our teachers in our community too, so that we could see those long-term effects. Because right now we're seeing children come in for maybe 1 or 2 visits, per month with their family, or they're coming in for maybe a 5-day summer camp. And so to kind of get those long-term metrics from that, I think we would need to have a little bit of a deeper partnership with someone to have some outcomes to share with the public.
Do you partner with the school districts? Like, are there any kind of science fairs or competitions at the local schools? Not yet. But again, I'm just getting started. So I'm looking forward to kind of building some of those relationships and seeing what we can do. Now that the museum has been open for a year and we've kind of figured out how to turn on and off the lights, we're sort of ready to dig in a little bit deeper and develop some of those relationships. Great, thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Snedden?
Thank you for your presentation. It's such an excellent resource for our community and children of all ages up to adults. And I'm wondering, it's just such a part of the future, combining the arts and sciences. And do you have scholarship opportunities or some of those longer term where you mentioned some different title schools that maybe can come for a visit for the day, but are there longer term ways to enjoy and learn from the museum?
Well, we do have... we do offer a discount for Title I schools who are coming on field trips. So it's kind of a sliding scale for schools that are coming through. And then we do have some scholarships available for our summer camp and our spring break camp programs. And we are excited to continue growing that as well, so that we can really have children from all backgrounds represented in our different programs.
Very good. Thank you so much,
right.
Ms. Goza. We're
Thank
pleased to be in partnership with Moxie.
Yeah, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Casey.
Yeah, if I could just say that people have asked why was Moxie presenting today. A, because they're great. And so we wanted to give
Yes,
them an
sir.
opportunity to present themselves, but they're a long-term tenant of the city. They're on city land at $1 a year lease, so it's one of the partnerships that you as a city council have entered into over the years. Two other notable ones that people might not be aware of would be the Santa Barbara Zoo, also on city land with $1 a year lease. And then the Community Arts Workshop is another more recent one. So I think it's an example of where the city is partnering with the community. The community did such an outstanding job, the board of directors at Moxie, of raising the money and building this museum and now operating it so well. But we wanted to give the opportunity for them to come here and kind of give a status report of how well it's working out. And I think it's a great success.
Thank you, Paul.
Wonderful. Thank you
All right,
so much.
thank you.
Keep up the good work. The next item is our capital improvement projects.
Item 10, subject Capital Improvement Program Mid-Year Report for Fiscal Year 2018.
Thanks. You ready there, Mr. Demore? Almost. There you go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Brian Demore, City Engineer with the City of Santa Barbara, and today I will be presenting a Capital Improvement Program status report. This is a mid-year report for fiscal year 2018. This is just informational. No action is required of the Council at this time, but I do these updates twice a year, one at the mid-year mark and one a full year report. Before I get started and dive into the projects, I did want to give just a quick, a brief summary of what the CIP is and how we utilize it. So every 2 years, city staff develops this capital improvement program. It is compiled by staff with input from all of the different departments. There are many projects included in it. Each project has there's a description of the project. The plans and policies related to the project are included in the CIP, and there's a status and funding snapshot that's included on each sheet. So that's done every 2 years. Kind of coincides with the budget process, and the next CIP will begin development this fall. Just a heads up on that. And I will jump in now and discuss the status of our current projects. We have 12 projects that have been completed so far, and there are 35 active in construction and 12 in design. That's a huge number for construction right now. So if people are noticing that there's a lot happening out in the community, there is. That's a much bigger number than we had 6 months ago and a year ago. So there's a lot going on. For the completed projects, I'll just kind of be brief on these here. I'm drawing the line here. That's at the $400,000 mark. That's what we consider to be a large project or a small project for P3 purposes, the Paradise Performance Program. And we have different measures that we look at for the success of our projects at the different levels. So the large projects over 400, smaller projects are under 400. And what we look at is the cost of engineering services. That would be city staff plus any consultants that we bring on board. The percentage of those costs compared to the overall project cost. On the large projects, we like to see that at or below 20%, and on the smaller projects, it's a higher number. The goal is 35%. And with these 12 projects, we're pretty much right where we wanted to be. I think we're at 21% on the large projects and 31% for the small projects. So we're doing pretty well with that. I'm going to go ahead and highlight a few of those projects that have been completed. One was the airport lighting and safety upgrades project. This consisted of the rehabilitation of airfield electrical system and the installation of new security fencing. The work also included installation of new runway guard lights at runway 15R and 15L. This next project, it's a small project, not a lot of money, but I would say we got a huge bang for our buck on this one. It was designed by city staff. It's called the Gibraltar Dam Davit Replacement, and you can see that davit's a small crane located there in the photo. What it does is it latches onto the hose at the bottom, which allows for water to go from the dam, from the reservoir, to this side of the mountains through the tunnel, and it's essential to be able to latch onto that and raise it up and down as sediment comes into the lake. And we were fortunate we were able to complete this project before sedimentation would have essentially locked that in, and would have been a much more expensive project to try to get that pipe accessible. So, like I said, small dollar value, but huge bang for our buck. We were able to get that functional. There's a new davit, a new crane. That's what's in the photo there, and it's electrical motor, much more functional and dependable than what we had there before. I think the old one, the arm of the davit actually bent because it just couldn't handle the force to pull up on that hose. Another project here, this is the water main replacement project. This is the one that was in construction last year. It's now completed. Work was done at several locations, Cabrillo and APS, obviously that's in the title, but there were a few other locations on Castillo, Cesar Chavez, and also a short segment of State Street. This next one is a sidewalk infill project on La Cumbra Road. This was phase 1. This is on the east side of La Cumbra Road, I believe from Maricopa Lane to just short of Sunset Road. The project included rectangular rapid flashing beacons, a new street light, and sidewalk access ramps, as well as stormwater treatment devices. So here's the big category, the projects in construction. I mentioned that there were 35 of those, value of almost $150 million. This first one here, I believe there's a video associated with that, and I'll let the video do the talking. Hopefully this will work.
If you've ever tried to cut across the Lower East Side and made the mistake of taking Cacique Street, you know the feeling. So close, yet so far. You see, Cacique abruptly dead ends at Sycamore Creek, a tantalizingly short distance from the other side. Cacique had a footbridge for a while, but in case you're wondering, yes, there used to be a vehicle bridge.
Previously, there was a vehicle bridge. It was actually removed in 1977, right before the rainy season, after the Sycamore Canyon fire, as a flood preventative measure by county flood control. And after that, the bridge was never replaced, and instead they put a 4-foot pedestrian wood bridge.
The old bridge was fine if you were crossing by yourself, but it didn't meet today's standards.
It was definitely undersized and dilapidated, so needed much more than improvement to be replaced.
The city had replacement of the Cacique footbridge on its radar for a while, but after hearing from the public during the East Side Neighborhood Transportation Management Plan process, something else was learned.
The community expressed the need for a connection to Soledad Street in order to get to Franklin and Adelante schools. So previously, students would either go through the creek or have to go around at least a few blocks to get to school, or they would also cross private properties.
The resulting Cacique and Soledad pedestrian, bicycle bridges, and corridor improvements project includes not one but 2 bridges, with plenty of room for pedestrians and bicyclists alike. The 75-foot-long bridges are quite a bit broader than the creek in order to accommodate any future creek widening. The project also includes improved lighting and landscaping, as well as a number of creek-friendly elements.
So we work closely with the Creeks Department to identify native plants that will be installed all along the creek banks and parkways, as well as implemented their stormwater management plan, BMPs, through infiltration basins and dry wells that will capture the stormwater runoff.
And to top it all off, the project was almost completely funded with grants, something the city of Santa Barbara is better at acquiring than any other municipality in the state.
So the total project cost is about $2.7 million, fully funded by the Active Transportation Program, with minimal city funds provided in order to account for future landscape maintenance.
The new bridges are a vital part of a highly used pedestrian and bicycle corridor, giving East Side residents convenient connection to schools, Milpas, the beach, and beyond.
Thanks. That's good news.
There we are, back on the mic. So not quite complete. You can see there were people walking around and biking around. There's still landscaping to be done. I think you saw there was one rendering that was on the video. Not all of the landscaping is done, but we do expect this to be complete this spring and fully open for public use. This next project is also funded by an Active Transportation Program grant, and we've just started the construction phase of this project. It is a sidewalk infill project on Lower Milpas. There's also sidewalk infill on Puerto Vallarta, and some other safety improvements associated with the rail crossing and some intersection signal modifications. That should be completed this summer. Next project, you're going to see a theme here, a lot of bridge-related work. Montecito Street bridge replacement and sidewalks. This was awarded just recently, and construction should be underway shortly with completion in winter 2019. It replaces the 103-year-old Montecito Yananali Street Bridge, includes the addition of sidewalk and wider shoulders for bicyclists, and fills in missing link of sidewalk on Salinas Street from Mason to Clifton. Traffic signal upgrades. This is also funded by grant. This one is Highway Safety Improvement Program, grant funded. A small project, but just wanted to give this a quick highlight. Looking at this photo here, you see the traffic signal heads. What the project is doing is replacing those heads with larger diameter signals, basically going from 8-inch to 12-inch at 23 different locations. So that will improve the visibility and safety for those locations. El Estero Drain restoration. That project is substantially complete. It consists of habitat improvement and wetland restoration of a 1.2 acre parcel that is adjacent to the El Estero wastewater treatment plant. Project includes removal of non-native plant species, excavation of contaminated soils, and restoration of the parcel. So I mentioned a water main replacement project that was completed. We also have one now that is in construction. This is a much larger project. This consists of the replacement of approximately 4.6 miles of water line throughout the city at a bunch of different locations. Some of the neighborhoods that we'll see more of the work will be in the San Roque area, San Marcand area, on the Mesa, and on the Riviera. Work is spread around town, and this will take into spring of 2019 for completion. This is the same location here that we saw for the davit replacement. This is again at Gibraltar Reservoir, and this is a valve vault modification project. The project included the replacement of valves and whoops, I'm on the wrong page. It included the replacement of valves inside the dam intake tower and added one new valve outside of the intake tower, which will help with the release of water from the reservoir over to Cater Water Treatment Plant. This is the one I had jumped ahead to. Cater Valve and Actuator Replacement Project. This involves the replacement of valves and actuators at Cater to improve operational efficiency.
What is an actuator? For those of us who didn't know what davit meant until I got this report, too. Yeah.
It's basically what controls the valve.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we can go to the next one. This is a large variety of projects that we get involved in, and this one here was led by Fleet and managed by our facilities group. It is a diesel fuel tank. So at the Courtyard, which is at Garden Street, basically behind the Public Works and Community Development Office, there was an underground storage tank for our fueling of vehicles, and this involved removing the underground tank and installing a new above-ground storage tank. Project also included replacement of pavement and extensive stormwater treatment for that whole facility in order to comply with the city's Tier 3 stormwater requirements. Last one here in construction, this is a big one, Cabrillo Pavilion and Bathhouse renovation that is currently in construction. It will be in construction for a while with an estimated completion next summer. So that is ongoing. So now on to the design projects, 21 projects in design, a little bit less than we've had in the past. We've seen a big shift from design to construction, about $51 million for those projects, and they're a variety of different departments. Again, as I mentioned, bridges are a big theme here, and we have the Anapamu Street bridge replacement. Design is essentially complete on that. We're awaiting authorization from Caltrans for the construction funding. Once we have that, we'll be able to put that one out to bid. This is located not on Mission Creek, but on what was the old Mission Creek before Caltrans came in and shifted everything to the city side of the freeway with their channel. So it spans what's called Old Mission Creek, and it's right by the Boys and Girls Club on the west side. So because it isn't Mission Creek proper, we do believe that if we're putting this thing out to bid, we'll be able to build it this year, even if we're pushing into the fall and winter months. Normally, we have to avoid that if we're on Mission Creek or Sycamore Creek. So we're hoping we'll get the authorization and we'll be in construction later this year on this project. Gutierrez Street Bridge replacement. This is out to bid currently, and we're awaiting receipt of bids. I think that will be in April. The bids come in. We'll be back to council likely in May for award. This is funded, like a lot of these bridge projects, through the Federal Highway Administration, and they typically fund projects at, it's an interesting percentage, I'm not sure how they've come up with it, but 88.53% of eligible costs are reimbursable. So that's good news for that one. And yeah, like I said, in May, we expect to be at council for award and construction this summer and fall.
And this is Gutierrez and Chapala area, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Thanks.
La Colina Force Main. So a couple of years ago, we went in and installed a new force main up there. So there's a wastewater lift station on La Colina, and it pushes wastewater into the gravity system to the east on La Colina. And a couple of years ago, we went in and installed a new force main. We left the old main in place so that one day we could rehab it and have some redundancy in the system if we ever needed to do anything on the new main. So that day has come. It's in design, and we'll be out to bid this month. And we're looking at construction in the summer to rehab that line to be able to have the redundancy in the system. Tunnel pump station. This project includes updating and rehab of the 44-year-old potable water pump station that serves the neighborhood at the top of Mission Canyon. Changes in technology, regulatory requirements, fire protection, and energy efficiency are some of the drivers for this project. It's expected to be out to bid near the end of this calendar year and constructed next year. That's kind of the end. Just a quick snapshot of the capital improvement program. I did want to go back to what I mentioned earlier about the city's capital improvement program. Just a reminder that this fall we will begin development of the next CIP. That's an extensive process with input from all the different city departments. And once we have a draft, we take that around to the boards, committees, and commissions. Eventually it goes to the Planning Commission, typically in January timeframe, and to the council a year from now in March 2019. So that's the end. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
We'll take questions from the council, and Bonnie Raisin has a public comment. But Mr. Hart, you ready?
I'm just curious, there's been so much progress made on the bridge replacement effort. Is there a timeline to have them all done, or where are we in that progress? Yeah, and maybe not even just limited to Mission Creek. Is there a plan to...
Yeah. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hart, we've been really fortunate that the Federal Highway Administration has for years been funding the bridge replacement program, and we were aggressive very early on. I would say that we got in line very early with a lot of our projects, and we've completed many of them already with Coda, Mason, Cabrillo, Ortega, Haley de la Vina, Chapala Yananali. There's a slew of them that are done, and yet there's still another handful that are well into design, as I mentioned. We have applied everyone that's eligible. We've applied for the replacement. What we're starting to see now with the program is that it's oversubscribed. So it used to be as soon as you were ready for construction, you got the money. Now things are starting to get staggered, and you have to wait a bit. But we've been fortunate that I think at this point, everything, as I was highlighting, these are ready for construction. We have our authorization. We're in really good shape. There's only one, which is the Upper De La Vina Bridge, which is in the design phase and still has a ways to go. There's also Mission Canyon. We're sorting that one out. I hope to be to council on that one soon. So there's a couple more that we're still working on, but we've taken care of the bulk of it, and we should be in good shape. The program continues to be funded. It's just not as easy to get the money, or you don't get it as quickly. But
Great. Well, thank you for that information. It is really impressive how much you've accomplished with those funds.
Councilmember Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Moore, on your completed construction projects, the small ones, a couple ones I wasn't quite sure I understood. Annual sewer tap. It's kind of a fun-sounding little program. What was that all about?
Yeah. I think Rebecca's coming up here. She'll be able to give you a description of that better than I could.
Good afternoon, Council. Mayor Murillo. I'm Rebecca Bjork, Public Works Director. Sewer taps are the connection of the private portion of the sewer system to the public portion. So the connection is made through tapping into the line and attaching a Y, which is a fixture. Because you have the work on the public portion of the line, the city requires that work be done by ourselves or our contractors rather than private contractors, in order that we make sure that the line itself remains in good condition. And that's our annual program for managing the work of the private-public connection on the sewer mains.
Does it relate then to the sewer lateral program that we talk about with residents then?
It does. It relates both to the sewer lateral program, where private sewer laterals are being inspected and replaced by homeowners, sometimes in association with remodels or improvements to their homes, and sometimes in association with issues that we've noted on their lines. But it also relates to new construction or just new taps into the system.
And then the ocean outfall manhole repairs, as opposed to non-ocean outfall manhole repairs.
So the ocean outfall is the outfall that serves the wastewater treatment plant. It discharges 8,750 feet offshore. It is not a pressurized line. So we use gravity to get the water out there. And under high tide and high flow scenarios, that manhole, which is onshore in the actually in the wastewater treatment plant, can pressurize. And the manhole was not built to be pressurized, so we needed to repair that so that it could operate under pressure without having water come out of the manhole on the plant.
Good. Thank you very much.
Very good. Ms. Snedden.
Thank you. I love the video. I just want a special thank you for that. I think we have all had that experience of driving up CK and having to stop, and all of these bridges that improve safety and the corridors through the city I think are fantastic. I had a question about the water, wastewater in general. Would you say that those are mainly maintenance, replacement projects, or are some of them expansive and moving towards the future, or how would you characterize most of the projects?
I would say most of the water, wastewater projects are just maintaining the existing system that we have. In some cases, we may be increasing the line, but typically it's just maintaining the system as it is. It's an aging system, both in water and wastewater, so we're just trying to keep it reliably operating.
Yeah, I was telling the Westmont students earlier how we're an old city, so that's what it is, right? These are just old pipes. Yeah. Okay, Ms. Raisin, come on up. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, City Council. I'm Bonnie Raisin, and I just want to thank you very much for that very comprehensive list. And what I would hope is that in April, when the funding from the our Measure C that was approved comes forth, that we could have this identical kind, well, not identical to this, but the format is excellent. If we could have this from the Public Works Department outlining how we're going to commence with our street and sidewalk repairs. It would be wonderful if the public could see or could hear a presentation like this that would give them and me the confidence that you fully intend to do the repair work. I am astounded at the disrepair of a street, for example, like Mission Street. It's dangerous. There are no vehicular lines to separate lanes. The indentations maybe are like safety speed bumps. I don't know, but it's a very, very bad street, and it's a thoroughfare. It's just as much of a thoroughfare as Carrillo Street is to the freeway and the west side. So, I hope that there's so much that needs to be done in the way of our streets and our sidewalks. And I would hope that a presentation like we just got on the capital improvement projects could come forth from Public Works on how they intend to proceed on the infrastructure that is so badly in need of love and care. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Raisin. So if there's no other comments or questions, we thank you for the presentation today and all the good work that you're doing. And we'll move to the next item.
Item number 11, subject 6-month update on the Accelerate program, expedited customer service and permitting for business along State Street from Cabrillo Boulevard to Sola Street.
Thank you. Are you ready, Mr. Buell?
I am. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council members, I'm George Buell, Community Development Director in the Community Development Department. And this afternoon, this is a 6-month update on a program that you initiated back in last August. It's since been named the Accelerate program, and the purpose of the program is really to augment a number of other initiatives that the city has undertaken to improve the experience that we have along State Street. In particular, for the purposes of this conversation, we're talking about a defined geographic area. These are along State Street from Cabrillo Boulevard to Sola. And the program seeks to essentially streamline the permitting process that we have. And I'm going to walk you through a number of those processes, as well as provide an update to you as to the results that we've seen over the course of the last 6 months. As we're all aware, there have been challenges along the State Street corridor. In particular, of particular concern to my department is the vacancy rate that we have seen over a protracted period of time now. The goal that we have with the program is to see a reduction of that vacancy rate to approach 5%. In talking with our counterparts in the private sector and commercial real estate, in particular with Bob Tueller and Gene Deering with the Radius Group, they indicate that a healthy vacancy rate would be somewhere around 5%. And so with that in mind, that's really a goal that we're shooting for. The steps that we have taken to address this really are threefold, as you see here. We have dedicated staff. And at this time, I'd like to just mention some people by name that have been involved in the program. They've been doing a ton of work and really good work as well. And so even though a number of these people are not with us because they're either homesick with the flu or they're working really hard back at the office, we have Pilar Plummer, who is our planner, who's the liaison to the Historic Landmarks Commission. We have Mark Aguilar, who has been our staff liaison through planning with regards to sign approvals. We have, make sure I don't miss anybody here, Elizabeth Sorgman, who's been working on the plan check side of things in the building division. We also have Adam Nares, who's our GIS technician. You'll see some neat maps as we go through the presentation. He's responsible for those. We also have Andrew Stuffler, our chief building official. Irma Unsueta, who is our senior planner overseeing design review in planning, and Renee Brook, of course, our city planner. And last but certainly not least is Greta Walters, who is our new executive assistant, who is the primary point of contact. When people call essentially our hotline number, she's the person who's picking up that phone and directing the calls appropriately. We've launched focused communications. We've reached out to all the property owners, to all the business owners. We've launched a website, and we've had various forms of communications to advertise the program, informing those with interest who have projects that are coming through the process that we have this service available. They don't need to ask for it. If you have a business that's along this corridor, you automatically get put essentially onto a fast track. And that fast track involves going through design review, sign review, the Historic Landmarks Commission agenda, and also through plan check once you have construction drawings provided. We've seen significant process improvements over the course of the past 6 months. Most notably is a 38% reduction in wait times for design review approvals, and so that's going through our Historic Landmarks Commission, and a 30% reduction in terms of wait times for plan check turnaround. That's very good, not just pretty good. And I would want to particularly note that with regards to design review, it's a reduction in real terms. Calendar days, it's reduced from 26 days to 16 days. And on the plan check turnaround, this is on average a reduction of 22 days to 15 days. And so that's very meaningful when you're probably paying money out towards a lease and you need to get your plans done quickly. This shows the properties that have frontage onto State Street that are part of the program. And so again, as we go through the balance of the presentation, this is the corridor that we're talking about. On August 15th, we had a total of 6 design review and sign applications in process and 8 building plan check reviews in process. And so you had a total of 14 applications. And then where we see that where we were at that point, 11 new design review applications have been submitted since August 2017, and the red dots on the map show the locations of those applications. And then we have 9 sign review applications submitted since August 15th, 2017. As a particular example, I was speaking with Mark Aguilar, who oversees the sign applications. If somebody submits plans that are ready to go to a board on a Thursday afternoon, they're going to be reviewed early the following week. And so he's very diligent in getting those turned around. I was very impressed with that when I was speaking to him about it. And even though we've seen 9 applications submitted since that time, we've only really seen a reduction of 1 day, and that's because we really started to ramp up the service level before we launched the program. So I wouldn't want to take away from that particular metric. It's that we've been able to sustain that level of service, which again has been remarkable. As far as design and sign review, again, we have 20 design and sign review applications submitted since August 15, 2017, and 75% of those have been approved, and so submitted and approved in that period of time. With regards to building plans, we've had 53 new plan sets submitted since August 2017. 34 of those have been submitted and approved, and then 22, this is an important fact to know and to understand, because a lot of people think that when you bring building plans, they automatically get dropped in off at our desk, and then they fall into a black hole, never to be seen, at least for a very, very long time. 22% of those plans that were submitted were approved over the counter at the time. Now, there might have been need for slight modification to those, but we do sign off on plans over the counter. It's important to know that. Now I'm getting towards the vacancy rate again. And so we have 29 vacant storefronts along the corridor. And that number 29 represents about 9%. In order to get to a 5% vacancy rate, we would need to see a reduction of about 12 additional storefronts, or filling of 12 additional storefronts. And so, again, that is the goal that we're working toward. And so, staff is hopeful that we will get there. We're seeing a gradual reduction in that vacancy rate over time. We estimate that to be about a 2% reduction over the course of the past 6 months. Although it's not a lot, it is progress in the right direction. And another service that we provided as part of the program that we've advertised is that the building division in particular has been available to consult early with prospective business owners and property owners as to what might be required or what would be required in order to bring buildings up to code, and what to expect as they go through the approval process, whether it's through plan check or through a design review process. And we have not seen very good results in that. And so as a result of a surcharge that the state of California has placed on every building permit that's issued, it's a $4 surcharge. We're going to use some of that revenue to turn around and to provide training for our design community, as well as prospective business owners and property owners that are interested in learning more about accessibility. That's where the money is supposed to be used. That's where we would spend the money. And it's usually when we're working within a built environment with old buildings, it's sometimes very difficult to adaptively reuse those buildings and conform to code. And so we would look for focused outreach over the course of the next period of time if council wishes for us to continue the program. We also council heard a report shortly after the debris flow in Montecito from the Coast Village Road Association, asking as to whether the Accelerate program could be expanded to Coast Village Road. And in response, staff has looked at some of the numbers. We see about 8 sets of plans come across our desk over the course of a typical year. With regards to design review, there aren't very many that come through, and so this is something that could likely be absorbed if it's council's pleasure to expand the program. Before I get into this next slide, I will remind the council that last week there was an item on your consent calendar where you moved money. It was $200,000 to provide for contract building plan review services. We have an excess of revenue that allowed us to do that this year. On the planning side, however, we do not have that amount of excess, and we don't have enough to cover necessarily the $52,000 that would be required to provide a continuation of planning staff for the program. We do, however, have a few funding options that I provide for the council's consideration. One is to appropriate funds from the general fund reserve. 2 is to shift planning staff resources, and that would mean that if human resources are moved from one focus area to another, then we would see a reduction in service levels wherever we move the people from and to this. And 3rd is what staff would recommend is continue the program implementation with budgeted funds by applying forecast excess revenues and projected salary savings. And those would, on balance, likely work out just fine as we approach the end of the fiscal year. And so staff is asking council or seeking council direction as to program continuation and as to whether or not the program should be expanded to include vacant commercial tenant space on Coast Village Road. Before I conclude, I would like to point out that Gene Deering from the Radius Group is here with us. He has been a terrific resource as they've been sharing information with us about the vacancy rate as they see it from their industry and comparing it to ours. And you may benefit from hearing from Gene and his perspective from the commercial real estate industry. That concludes my remarks, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Buell. We'll start with Mr. Rouse and then to Mr. Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Mr. Buell, in your process, or you talked about the over-the-counter issues. Have you changed any of the protocols and ministerial approvals of certain items, and is it the same as it has been, or have you decided to be able to expedite things by making more ministerial approvals over the counter?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse, we haven't changed any of the policies or codes or standards. What we have done is we've moved Elizabeth Sorgman, we haven't moved her, we've allowed her to move to the counter to look at small applications and look at them right at the counter rather than throwing them in a plan check queue to be reviewed days later. And that's what's helped us to expedite more permits at the counter.
And then in terms of the intake process, when people submit plans, and I know that we've had a lot of extra traffic and ancillary things like ADUs and whatnot, how much information or how do we inform the applicant about the best way to get things in the first time as opposed to submittal and return for comments or return for, I mean, that's certainly what we hear a lot about from the outside looking in is what happens when somebody brings the plans in and they go, okay, we got them. Oh, look at this, you forgot to do these 4 things. Is there any change or discussion or improvements in that forthcoming that from your end that you can share with us?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse, we have we've had for a number of years a submittal standard checklist. It's pretty lengthy. If someone goes through that, they're going to increase their odds of getting through the plan check process, probably in 2 rounds, because it's very difficult to get everything on one round, the first round. The design community is becoming more aware of the code changes that went into effect January of last year, so that's helped. Their learning curve has started to flatten out. So that's what's been contributing to this last calendar years. We had a very big increase in the number of reviews because we had a code change and people weren't getting it right on the plans, and now that's starting to come down. They're starting to figure out, okay, this is what the code requires, and I can provide that up front, first round, second round of review.
Thank you. Ms. Nzueta.
Madam Mayor and Council, with respect to design review, I can tell you that we are prioritizing the Accelerate projects with respect to giving them more information and thorough guidance with respect to what should be on the plans and how to get their plans in a form that is complete the first time around, so that we're trying to, expedite it in that respect and give them the guidance and the information that they need to have their plans ready for first review.
Thank you. And my last question is, I know that Mr. Buell and staff, and I certainly talk a lot about customer service and increasing the customer experience. And you've all clearly, from your numbers, have made improvements. What impediments or what would be key in making that even a better process? Is it how the applications are received? Do we need more staffing or resources, or is it just the luck of the draw in terms of the flux of business and how that goes? What would be your thoughts on that?
Councilmember Rouse, members of the council, the most problematic type of project that we have that come across our counter is where, as I described before, where we have old buildings that are not up to current code. And so really, our staff spends a considerable amount of time working with the design community on what is required in order to comply with accessibility standards in particular. There are some cases also where a comprehensive remodel is taking place on a building. I can think of one, I believe it's in the 900 block, where it needed to comply with stormwater requirements as well because they disturbed a certain amount of soil. And so when that happens, it becomes very, very difficult to meet both accessibility and stormwater. And so I would answer that getting back to what we really think we need to focus on over the course of the next period of time, and that is on education. To the extent that we can provide good information and education to our counterparts in the professional design community, it will help them set realistic expectations for their clientele as they get into these buildings and they start looking at them. The other thing is consult with us early as you can, preferably before you sign a lease, because it's at that point where you can start to understand what it's going to take to get through the process and in terms of time and money.
When you say consult with you early, so how would that process go? Is that from the applicant, the architect, both? And how do they set that appointment up, and who do they speak with?
They would come to either our building or planning counter, and we can set up a consultation meeting. And Andrew might like to provide a little bit more information because it's something that we've been hoping to be more successful.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, council members, we have a planner consult that they can, an applicant can apply for, pay a fee, and they'll have an appointment with a planner. But on the building side, we have what's called a pre-case, or it's a preliminary review. They can come to the building counter and submit to us their questions of what they have, or a kind of a preliminary plan check. I do have to kind of preface that or cover that offer with the fact that we're so busy right now that trying to get to the pre-cases when we have building cases backing up in our system, the actual building permit applications, it's really difficult for us. So we are struggling trying to keep up with that preliminary review. And so sometimes it'll be an email conversation that we have about a particular topic as opposed to someone giving us a plan and having us look at the plan preliminarily.
Thank you.
Mr. Dominguez?
Thank you. What does the $52,000 go towards?
The $52,000 is the estimated cost to provide for half of a planning position.
So I was just wondering, because wouldn't streamlining this process result in less salary expenditure?
Councilmember Dominguez, that's a very good question. I understand what you're getting at there. Typically, what we see happening, as we were describing before, is when even though projects may be streamlined because of the difficulty of working within the built environment, sometimes they get bogged down, and so we would not be comfortable backing off from that number right now. Maybe at some point in the future we'll hit a kind of that tipping point, but for the time being, the staff resource that's required at this point is that $52,000 would be appropriate.
And I can see it might be difficult to parse out particular aspects of whether someone's services comes out of Accelerate or not, but it just seems to me like getting projects through the system faster is going to save everyone money, particularly the city, particularly when we're not, we don't have full cost recovery in place. And we may not be able to track it, but given what we just heard, that we have staff very much busy their entire time. They're not people sitting around without work to do. So as long as those conditions exist, and I know that could probably change at any time, it seems like we would be saving money the more we're streamlining people. The fewer visits they have to make, the fewer emails, the fewer phone calls and site visits, we're going to save money. So I guess it's just a matter of when that would end, and would we be left with 6 months with a bunch of staff sitting around without having work to do. That I could see that might cost us money, but it seems like for these past 6 months, or at least since August 15th, this has saved us money. The only condition I could imagine that would make that not true is if we induce demand. But given the environment on State Street, and given the, I guess, people's feelings towards development and people wanting to come in voluntarily in developing, I can't see induced demand being a problem for the city. So do we have any idea if there's induced demand because of offering more services?
Councilmember Dominguez, I have not looked into that. That's a good question. What we do know is when we started the program, we had, I think the number was 24 applications in process, and since then we've processed 53. I don't know if that was due to induced demand or more ripe economic conditions in terms of the city is offering something. The property owners, I'm hearing, are also looking at how much they can charge for their leases on a per square foot basis. And so we might hear from Mr. Deering, for example, where those trends are going, because that could definitely induce demand as well. The other thing to consider is the interest rates that are available. They're still very attractive, and so people are putting money into commercial ventures. It's a difficult permitting environment, granted, but at this point, the economy seems to be holding very strong. Stepping back from State Street just for a moment, if we will, the citywide vacancy rate, commercial vacancy rate, is estimated at 3.1%. That's very tight. That's very good, but it's this particular corridor that continues to struggle.
And that leads me to my next question, which is, do you know what the vacancy rate is, for example, on Milpas?
No, I do not.
I'm wondering if we could modify this program that if we do have other areas, whether it's Milpas or the West Side, Upper State Street, where you do see an increased vacancy rate, and I'd pick a number like above 10%, that the program then could open up for those neighborhoods. Is that something that we could see happening?
If that was the pleasure of the council, we could definitely look into something like that. I would indicate that what we're talking about, let me just redirect for just a moment to Coast Village Road. What we're proposing on Coast Village Road is to focus solely on the vacant storefronts. And so where we have a vacant space. On State Street right now, if somebody comes in, for example, if they want to go from fluorescent to LED lighting, they get put into the Accelerate program, even though the space may be occupied. If they want to modify, say, a restroom or something of that nature, they still get moved to the front of the line. And so at some point, I think it would be appropriate to really focus in on what the actual and perceived problem is, and that's with vacant storefronts. And so whether it's on one corridor or another, eventually I think surrounding those property owners and those prospective business owners with the type of service that will help open or reoccupy that space would be appropriate.
That sounds good. Regarding the over-the-counter type projects you mentioned where we had much quicker results, is that because of the nature of those types of projects, or was it because of the level of preparation, or some combination?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Dominguez, that's because of the scope of the application. The permit is relatively small and simple, and we're bringing the plans examiner to the counter to do that review instead of putting it into a queue for the plans examiner to look at days or weeks later.
So that'd be more like the example of the light changing versus moving walls around?
That would be a good example, yeah.
So is there anything we can do, given that we understand that there are these two categories that might help the non-over-the-counter people?
I'm not following you.
So the ones who come to the counter and they're able to get help in one day and leave getting signed off on, I'm imagining that hasn't changed very much. Like they were able to do that before Accelerate, or no?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Dominguez, they were able to do that when we could afford to do it with our staffing. So oftentimes we didn't have staff who could come to the counter, and we would take it back into the back office for a week or a couple days to try to get it resolved, to get it plan checked. I think there's an important cost that we haven't accounted for yet, and that is when we offer these services and we bring staff up to the counter, they're not back in their office doing the plan check of the other projects that are not accelerated, that are not in this program, and we really don't have a way to measure what is the expense, what is the extra time those applications are having to incur as we expedite these others, because we have a fixed amount of resource in staffing And they're not spending any less time on the review because they still have the same number of building standards to review to. So there's this piece that we haven't quantified yet. It's very complicated to try to quantify what is the cost to the rest of the people who have applied for a permit but are not in the Accelerate program. And that's where we have discussions about expansion of the program, and it'd be wonderful to expand it. But we're like, at what point do we get to will we reach the inability to provide a timely review for those who are not in the Accelerate program but have applied for a building permit? And that's a tension. That's something that we're trying to address and pay attention to, but it's difficult to analyze with our system.
So then a solution to that would potentially be to add another staff member?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Dominguez, exactly, or use contract service. In our case, that's where we go to Bureau Veritas or California Code Check, and the work that Elizabeth Sorgman would be doing at her desk, we send out to those outside services. And we choose to do that because we're not sure how long this robust permit activity period is going to last. We're at about 150% of our capacity right now. We're really good with about 80 applications in our process at any one time, or 80 reviews in our process, and we're at 120. We've been as high as 180 last year. So we're trying to make sure we're prudently using the customer's money to provide good service, and at the same time not over allocating our resources so that, or not over spending on our resources so that when things slow down, we've got people sitting with nothing to do.
Thank you.
Councilmember Snedden.
Thank you. So it looks like you're fighting really hard for that 2% increase or decrease in vacancy rates, and I'm trying to understand a little bit how we get there. Is there a decrease in the rate of vacancies? Is that leveling off, or do we still have just as many vacancies coming up, but we're just being faster with filling in the new spaces? What's happening with the rate of vacancies right now?
We estimate that we've seen a slight reduction in the vacancy rate over the course of the last 6 months. Again, it's not particularly remarkable, at an estimated 2%. I would want to also clarify, it's spelled out in the agenda report, but it's important, I think, for everybody to understand. The vacancy rate is a number that city staff has come up. Actually, it was Greta who did a walking survey a few weeks ago. And walking through and looking into each storefront where it seemed questionable as to whether or not there was a business there or not, writing it down, coming back, and then comparing it to our building permit data. If there was an active building permit on that property, we know that they're working towards occupying that space. We did not count that we counted that as being an occupied tenant space as opposed to being vacant. And so there are a handful of those projects along the corridor. And so it may feel and seem like there are more vacant spaces than the 9% that I've described. But nonetheless, those properties are in the process of reopening.
I have a couple more questions. If you could fill everything instantly with what's been the applications that have come in, would we be at that 5%, or how far off would we be? I mean, regardless of the amount of time that it takes to look at each permit, how close would we be to that 5% if everything was just filled right away?
We need to fill an additional 12 tenant spaces along the corridor. I don't know that I'm understanding.
And how many applications are in right now?
Oh, in terms of filling those spaces, I don't know that we have that number.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I had two questions about two of the slides. One, slide 10, I think it's slide 10, where it has the 29 vacant storefronts. And there's sort of that, I can't read the street names, where the grouping of all those green are to get together. Right there.
Yeah.
What's happening there? I mean, what makes it, or is there anything particular that's happening right there that makes all those bunched together?
You know, there's probably a really good story behind that I suspect that Gene Deering could provide information on that. Okay. I don't have particular property owner information. There might also be others in the audience who have information as well. That's
Mr. Deering, if you're willing to speak to us, thank you.
Sure. Madam Mayor, members of the council, the vacancy number coming up with it is pretty tricky because you could walk by a storefront and there could be a pop-up shop that is in there on a very cheap rent so that there's some activity in that space. So you may walk by and it may feel like that space is full. There's 3 buildings on State Street right now that are in escrow, and those spaces you walk by and they may seem empty, but there's a deal pending there. So it's really hard to pinpoint what that actual number is. There may be spaces on State Street where a tenant has 4 months left on their lease. They've given notice that they're leaving, and the property owner is marketing it for lease, but there's no sign up. So you walk by and it feels full, but that block there may be 3 or 4 vacancies. Right now, the 900 block has quite a few spaces that are on the market, and those could be vacant for a variety of reasons. Some could be the asking price that the owner is looking for, and it could also be the uncertainty. That's something that I deal with a lot. If I'm in a space with a tenant, it's an older space, and maybe this is a cool, creative tenant that has this new, exciting idea that we would all love to see come to State Street. But previously, that space was selling cell phones, and so there's no fire sprinklers, it's not an ADA restroom, maybe there's asbestos, and the tenant says to me, so if I go in here, what am I going to trigger in these items? And will my use be seen similar to the cell phone use or a different use? And I will always say, talk to an architect, talk to a land use consultant, and try to understand that from what the city is going to be looking for. It's further complicated because the property owner, maybe they don't owe any money on the building. And so for them, they may be more excited to do the t-shirt shop. That isn't the creative new use, but it means I get a lower rent and nothing changes. Someone moves in there and I keep receiving checks. So it's a tough balance. Every property is different. Mr. Buell talked about it, that we have these older buildings, and I'm guessing that property on the 900 block with the stormwater management, no one anticipated that coming up, and it's unfortunate that it was an unknown whether that fell on the tenant or the landlord. I just see uncertainty as an issue in deciding if someone's going to take on the challenge of opening their own business right now.
Well, Mr. Deering, while you're up there, and you're next, Mr. Friedman, but I wanted to ask him a question.
I have one more.
Oh, you have one more?
Yeah.
Please, go
not
ahead.
Not for Mr. Deering, though, so if you have another.
Ms. Snedden, go ahead.
I had another question about one of the slides. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stand by.
Let's see. Sorry. So the last one. Oh, it's slide 14. The wording on option 3 is slightly different than the wording we have in the agenda packet. And this wording includes projected salary savings, which is not in our packet. And I'm just wondering what those might be.
Let me just summarize, if I may. At the end of every fiscal year, we have how much money we have spent on the expenditure side, and also how much money we have brought in on the revenue side. With regard to the planning division, we know that our revenue is off this year. And so Renee, over the course of the year, she's being very diligent in how she's spending money, because that's how she delivers a balanced budget. We know that as a department, we typically there's typically money that is brought back to the general fund. It's not always a tremendous amount, but consistently we have brought money back to the general fund. And it's with that excess that we have seen year over year that we're confident that we can make that $52,000 requirement for this program.
Mr. Friedman, go ahead.
Thanks. I had a question. It gets back to one of the problem issues is for older buildings, and that you mentioned bringing up the code. And do we know why that there hasn't been any applications for the fee-based services to really go through that? And the other question is, in some of these code issues, are there steps we can take to kind of try to address those, looking at what other jurisdictions have done? One example, I was talking with someone who was interested in a property down there, And one of the issues is ADA accessibility, especially in older buildings. And you mentioned that, I don't even know if this is possible, but just being creative, trying to look at things would be if the business could come in there and get set up, but later on, but as part of their permit, they can get up and operating, but then once they're operating, go and address the ADA issues after they're already in versus having to address all those up front. Do other jurisdictions do that, and have we looked at what other jurisdictions are doing, especially in terms of code compliance issues? Is what
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Friedman, the state building code does not allow us the luxury of being able to defer accessibility code requirements. Those requirements, according to the state building code in Title 24, they're required to be met at the time of building permit application and included in the plan set. There's some percentages that they use to make it somewhat relative. They say you have to spend at least 20% of your project value on accessibility improvements. So those were kind of policy decisions that the state made when they published the building code, and they brought the accessibility provisions in from the ADA. That's where we see that 20% that has to be applied. That's the percentage we use when the project is $160,000 or less of total construction in the last 2 or 3 years. I'd have to go back and look. I can't remember if it was 24 or 36 months. What we'll see is a series of tenant improvements or changes over the course of, say, 2 years, and they trip the $160,000 threshold. And now the code's next move is very draconian. It says when you're over 160,000 in improvements, you shall make the whole property compliant. And then they throw out this big subjective exception, unless it's an unreasonable hardship. And then they try to define an unreasonable hardship, which is very subjective. So the way we've addressed that is we allow people to submit to us, if they are over 160,000, a unreasonable hardship request documenting where they're spending their 20% of their project value. And then we take that to our Board of Appeals for ratification so that the public understands what we're doing, the board approves it as well as myself, and it's discussed out in the open to make sure that that's really what the community is looking for in the way of enforcement of the code.
And then back to the original question, do we know why that there hasn't been anyone to partake in the fee-based services at this time?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Friedman, I don't know why. We did a little pilot with one of the architects in town. They offered to take us to a property they wanted us to do an analysis on for them to show them what we would give them in the way of a work product. We gave it to them. They gave us some really good feedback. We let people know that we have this service available, but they don't take advantage of it. So I could only assume why they're not doing that. I really don't know.
Mr. Rouse?
Quick follow-up to Mr. Friedman's question about other types of codes that might be some flexibility on. Is that I know the ADA standards is state standard and federal standard. Stormwater, that seems to be the bane of a lot of commercial development right now. Is that something that we have any flex over, or is that also kind of cast in stone?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse, our stormwater permit is issued by the state of California, and we are responsible to implement that and all the conditions that are included in it. Our permit is overseeing the steward of that particular part of our plan review and inspection or actually on the plan review side right now, is in our Creeks division. And we do know that the permit will come up for renewal. And the exact timing of that, I'm not sure, but it's at that point that we would be able to go back to the state and perhaps renegotiate some of the terms of that permit. I don't know how successful we would be, but nonetheless, that would be the window of opportunity to look for in that regard.
Okay, we have a lot of public comment, but I did want to ask Mr. Deering another question about comparing our city to other cities. The downtown organization's retail study said we have a really long, State Street is a really long retail corridor. How do we compare to other cities like Ventura or Camarillo in terms of downtown vacancies?
I'm not sure in terms of specific numbers. We are very fortunate that we're not a mall-based city with one big interior mall and a lot of strip malls. So the makeup of State Street, small individual owners, does create a unique tenant experience, and I think it's part of what makes State Street great, in that there isn't uniformity in how everything looks, or one property owner that holds all the cards.
And then my other question is, Mr. Rouse mentioned stormwater. We've been talking about ADA compliance, but parking is another issue, right? Maybe not so much on State Street because of our parking, but other parts of the city. Sometimes people will lease or buy without really understanding the parking requirements.
Right. I think right now it's pretty in vogue. Whether you're a gym, you're a retail tenant, everyone wants this nice industrial building, high ceilings, a lot of open space, any type of use, and those buildings typically don't have the parking to support those uses. So when we have industrial buildings that are available, that's the first question when anyone calls on them. How are you thinking of occupying it? Because we probably don't have the parking to support it.
All right. Thanks for your expertise today. We'll go to public comment. Barrett Reed, you're up first. Still here? Come on up. And you're from the Miramar Group, it says. Judy Foreman, you'll be after him. And then Charles Valle. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. So my business, the Miramar Group, is developing a project on 400 block of State Street, 418 and 416. It's a mixed use retail, so a big open format. Our focus as a business is adaptive reuse, as Mr. Buell had mentioned. We did a similar project in the Funk Zone, about 10,000 feet. This shell permit is about 6,000. We submitted our plans May 17th, 2017. We still don't have a shell permit. I definitely agree with education. Through this experience, we have seen the most lag in the plan review. Design review was pretty good. HLC was pretty good. We're still going back for some other things. I believe we're in our 4th round of the plan check. And there's just a lack of understanding in solving these problems. We also, another property we have in the Central Business District, I think, is the property you spoke about, Mr. Stuffler. So we try to prepare as best as we can before we submit. On our 400 block project, we have a CASP, so that's a certified accessibility specialist, to help with every possible issue that could arise. One of the biggest delays in one of our 4 reviews was about a window opening and its accessibility, its access in a workspace. Our architect on the job saw no reason for an issue. So did our CASP, but there was a difference of opinion with the building staff, and that took 2 months to resolve. Part of that problem from our perspective is the availability of staff to sit down with us in person to review. I have a project that we're completing just outside the Central Business District, and we were able to get through that quickly with pretty complex issues because the plan checker was always willing to sit down with our architect. They've only been willing during the first round to sit down with us and have since denied those in-person reviews.
You're over your time.
Okay.
If you could finish your thought.
Yeah. Main point, projects that are outside the Accelerate program that we are currently involved with or have completed. were quicker permitting times in larger spaces and more complicated spaces than what we're currently involved in on State Street.
Don't go away. Mr. Hart, did you have a question for the speaker?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you have a chance to explain everything. You summarized quickly, and it sounded like you got to your point, but I don't want you to be short on time. This is an important.
I'm available for questions. Now, I love the program, and I definitely understand the complexities. And I think other property owners in the audience, we are available 24/7 to work through this with you guys. So.
Is it your impression that different staff people are giving different answers to the same questions? Is that your point?
I think, yes. I think to Mr. Buell's point, there's just a difference in understanding of the code and how to correct these issues and reconcile them. So maybe one member of the staff will have more understanding on a certain subject than the other. And then, it's just the nature of one staff member is more familiar with this architect and maybe they have a value of time too. They're totally pressed for time. So maybe they'll sit down for a review with one architect we'll use, but not the other. Just because there's a pre-existing relationship and it's easier. They know what they're getting into. So there are a lot of complexities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Completely appreciate it. I appreciate you coming and taking the time to share your story.
Absolutely.
I know that, elevating these kind of conversations when there's that much time lag, I've seen Mr. Stuffler and Mr. Buell very responsive to that. And so I know you must have tried to take advantage of that.
Oh, they're great. They're great. And I'm agreeing with all their points. I mean, Mr. Stuffler said as much as they want to invest in these pilot programs to educate us on the front end, they have a limited amount of time and resource to be able to do that. So.
Right. Well, thank you again for that comment. I don't want to slow us down completely on your specific thing, but it's really illustrative of what the challenges are. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dominguez, did you have a question for Mr. Is it Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, for being here and for developing in the city. And I know it's been an interesting political climate around the country, and then we've had our own local issues with the fire and flood and with the retail climate the way it is. I appreciate your efforts. What is it, if there's one thing that the city can do differently, what would you recommend?
Gosh.
Put you on the spot here.
Yeah.
You probably if you have a list of three things.
We are doing everything we can to be as prepared as possible. So when we don't get the opportunity to review in person and to flush something out, which we absolutely can and have in other contexts, that's challenging. And when the consequence of that is multiple months, it's hard. We're 10 months in, and there's no shell permit. We have fully leased project with, I would argue, some of the most impressive businesses and tenants State Street will have if hopefully this project comes to fruition. So we're pretty prepared, and we're just not getting a lot of engagement.
Well, I can definitely understand that. I know just today I spent an hour on an email where it would have been a 5-minute conversation, but just haven't been able to get in touch with the person. So I know a lot of times face-to-face meetings can be so much faster and effective.
Yeah.
So we'll see what we can do on that front.
Okay.
Thanks a million.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Foreman, come on up, followed by Charles Valle, and then Jan Van Yurt. Or Jan Von Yurt.
Hello, everybody. Madam Mayor, I'm here as a property owner on Coast Village Road, and I'm assisted by our head of our Coast Village Road Business Association, Sharon Byrne, to support her with my experience. And I would recommend to the council that Ms. Byrne speak first. She has a more global approach,
Oh,
and
sure.
she also filled it out, and then I can add and support what she's saying.
Ms. Byrne, come on up. Two people are giving you their time, so you have 6 minutes altogether.
Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to start out by saying thank you first to Councilman Dominguez for reaching out to us about this after the fire, actually, when you were still our council liaison last year. And then for George Buell to reach out to me as well. The first answer from Coast Village Road is yes, 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 thank you. We would like to get the Accelerate program. However, we have three pretty big challenges in front of us, and the Accelerate program falls into the third bucket. So the first challenge is we're in a disaster-induced depression, if you will, that we were the only business district in the city that was closed during the fire as part of a mandatory evacuation in December. Our business has really struggled quite a bit in December. In January, obviously, we were closed for 14 straight days during the mudslide. And when we opened back up, we still didn't have potable water, so our restaurants couldn't really open back up. So we've had some serious struggles. We understand the Accelerate program was developed for the State Street vacancies, and we understand the urgencies of State Street. We actually do. Bob Ludwig has asked me to insert a thought here that it might not be the most appropriate thing to measure just the number of vacancies and calculate a percentage there. You really need to look at your square footage, because a vacancy at Macy's would be a very different vacancy than a vacancy at the Habit. You see the difference in the size there, right? And the kind of impact that it has on your street. So we don't have that many vacancies, thankfully. What we have is a major struggle. So our first struggle is, can we keep the businesses that we have open and running now, can we keep them open and running? And they generate your current sales tax and your current TOT, because we are in the city limit. Both are ends on the street. The TOT comes to you. And the merchants along the street report that things have been slow. It's been, that even though there's been great local support, it's still slow. And we feel that that is because we only just got the Montecito Inn back, and the Biltmore is still closed. And obviously the San Ysidro Ranch is not going to be open for a while. So first, we're struggling with an economic climate that's pretty tough, and we would just want to stay open and we want to keep going. Second, we have some businesses that are trying to open that would be great draws for the street. So there's a Crab Shack that's trying to open up, and a restaurant up in the Country Mart, and there's a couple of others. And some of these are actually, they have come through the permitting process with the city before. So Renaud's Patisserie, for example, this won't be his first go-round. And the Empty Bowls, which currently is in the public market, is planning to open also on Coast Village Road. So this wouldn't be their first time going through the city. And maybe there's reasons we just don't know and we can't see, but it does seem like it's taking an inordinately long time for them to get through the process of getting opened. And Montecito Inn in particular, the Crab Shack, has been delayed in sign committee since November of last year. And it's just about the awning color at this point. But they keep getting told, come back next month, it'll be on the agenda next month. They're ready to go. They just need a sign approval. So that's the only thing holding, a restaurant from opening up, which is kind of a sad state of affairs. So our second priority is, first priority is keep the guys that are open, keep them open, right? Keep them generating sales tax and TOT, because you need those revenues. Second priority is, for the people that are in the permitting pipeline now, is there some way we can come to the front of that queue or find out how we can expedite those, because they do seem to be taking some time. And then third, yes, for the vacant storefronts that we have, Accelerate would be great. Judy Foreman has a vacancy that just opened up, sadly. And she's had two amazing candidates come forward. One is an expansion of Los Arroyos into that space, and the other is Marjoram Winery, which would be a smash hit on Coast Village Road, I have to tell you. And we can't meet the parking requirements for either one. And there's ways we could work around that. So I think what we're asking you for is, can we have hyper accelerate? Can we have something that is very helpful in terms of getting these businesses open sooner? And can we have some leeway and work with you that if we need to look at a valet parking solution or whatever we need to do, we're willing to do that, but not to turn away really good applicants that could move in tomorrow, just for well, you don't meet the parking requirements, or is there some way we can negotiate this? Some way we could buy parking that would be adequate and run a shuttle? We're happy to start thinking creatively like that. So I think given that the last sentence in the report says, in response to the need for business support along Coast Village Road, please, please, yes, and thank you for thinking about how to support us. We have a couple of additional asks, and I just want to thank you on behalf of the Coast Village Association Board. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Foreman, did you want to come up?
It's a real honor and pleasure to be in front of you today. I've been a resident of Santa Barbara since 1988 and a property owner on Coast Village Road since 1989, and have raised my children in the community. And in addition to being a writer with some of the local reports, I'm definitely a community activist. And my property on Coast Village Road, which has been the scene of wonderful activities such as Ghost Village Road and other things, has been fantastic. And unfortunately, due to the mudslide and the fire, I lost, it's a 6-space building, but I have 4 tenants, and I lost 2 of my 4 tenants. So that is a problem. And in trying to release my spaces, as you heard, I have had, because of the location, I've had a lot of people looking. And the types of businesses that are looking, some of them, you know, they have more, like Los Arroyos was interested in expanding into the salon and maybe having a wine, not a wine bar, but a sports bar, and moving things in, which is a more of an evening business when the other retail stores are not there. So I've worked also with Radius. Steve Brown is my broker, and he's had several people go through that are financially sound. And so we are asking, I am asking that you work with me in helping me to lease those spaces, because it's not only my income, but it helps everybody's morale, which is, I mean, I'm even finding now that tenants, prospective tenants, are writing in the leases that they don't have to pay the rent on evacuation days. So we're in a completely new world. But again, you know, it's an important part of the city, and I thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you will consider working with us where the parking is concerned, because we have interested people that want to be on our street. Anyhow, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
I don't,
Mr. Casey.
Will of the council, I don't know if you would like staff to respond to some of the anecdotes that we're hearing today, or do you want us to wait till the end, kind of at your preference?
Well, sure.
Parking is so hard. You know, you all know that our parking code is very challenging because we get pressure from both sides. Be more flexible, hold the line on parking. We just did a new zoning ordinance update that addressed parking and tried to make more flexible standards for parking, and even then that doesn't always meet some of the needs you hear out in the community. So that's a tough one. Some of the other ones, I don't know if you want to get into them point by point as we hear them today, or if you want us to follow up directly.
It seems like a short meeting today. Mr. Hart, did you have an opinion?
Or we can be following up directly with the folks and have that dialogue offline and get the right people talking to them, whatever you would prefer.
Well, I think it is probably important to have some description of, you know, we're hearing one side. Parking is a completely different subject, and I get that, and I appreciate your concerns, but that is a complex thing, and that's not what we're talking about with the Accelerate program. So I don't know that we can do anything today about that. But I think it is important to hear from the staff in response to the specific, you know, folks are saying specifically about specific properties, here's our experience, you know, they wouldn't be here making those points without understanding the implications of that, and I think it is appropriate to have staff answer. But I don't know whether you want to do it at the end when everybody's said their piece, or step by step. It's your call.
Yeah, let's go ahead and finish public comment, and if you're taking notes, good. Charles Valle or Valley, please tell me how you say your name. Followed by Jan Von Yurt. Please tell me how you say your name.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's always fine. Charles Val or Charles Val. Thank you for this opportunity to share my experience. I'm the managing member for the LLC that owns the Copper Coffee Pot building that you're probably all familiar with on State Street, 1029 State Street. And I I have been trying to remodel this place for 18 months. It has been 18 months that I started the process. $130,000 later of structural engineers, plumbing engineers, mechanical engineer, kitchen designer, electrical engineer, architect, I still don't have a permit. I still cannot start construction. So people told me it would be tough when I started. A lot of people told me, don't do anything. Just keep the building as is. Probably that's what I should have done. But I love the building. I think it's a great attraction for Santa Barbara. I think the street could look great. And nobody likes the way it looks right now. But frankly, there's a few things that are really frustrating. The accelerated program, I sent an email on September 22, 2017 to ask for an appointment for my property located 1029 State Street. I never got any reply. So I called a few times, got voicemail, left voicemails. Nobody came back to me. Maybe I called like 6 times. So once somebody replied to me and I had an appointment to explain what I want to do. It was a very brief meeting. So I asked if we could go a little bit more in depth, but no, it was 2 minutes on the counter, and that's it. That was my experience of the program, I'm very sorry to say. So this morning I called again, and I think because of this meeting, I have an appointment tomorrow, but I wish it just happened much earlier. So
you're over your time, but
yeah.
What's your address, sir? What's the address?
1029 State Street.
1029 State. Okay, go ahead and finish your thought, please.
Okay, so basically, I think indeed the plan check, the number of days of the plan check is great. I think I have nothing to say on that. It came back quickly, the comments were there. I think unfortunately, that's not where is the problem. Because when you renovate an historical building, it triggers a lot of things. You move one wall by 1 foot, or you have a structural engineer that tells you you can only do 1 opening. You cannot do 2 openings in a retaining wall that has been built 100 years ago. So that triggers many things. The size of the bathroom, so it's very difficult. So each time there's a comment, so people might not realize it, but I have to come back to the structural engineer, plumbing engineer, mechanical engineer, kitchen designer, electrical engineer, architect to redo all their plans. Okay. And so 25 or 30K later, I have to resubmit the plans, and then I have a new comment, and my thing doesn't work. So like 3 weeks ago, I thought I was done. I go to that. So the health department told me, no, you cannot have an opening like that. We cannot allow the opening like that. But that's what the historical commission told me I can do, and I want to bring back the building like it was in the early 20s. So I think there's really a need of communication between these different agencies, between the historical commission, the building department, the health department. And, and also
did you have a question for the speaker, Mr. Friedman?
Yeah, I just said it's more of a comment for staff. This seems to me like it would be a perfect candidate for the service that we were talking about earlier, the fee-based service for upfront for the code and addressing those upfront and walking through it. Are these types of projects the ones that we had in mind with this service? It seems like he's seen all these historical issues and everything he's talking about. Seem to be a prime candidate for that. And if it's possible, maybe offline you could talk with him about what the service is, so he can understand that, and maybe we can use that or something to that degree.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Friedman, yes.
Okay.
We will.
So just to finish.
Well, okay.
Yeah. So I think we just need to improve the communication between the different agencies, or if we could have a meeting with everybody at once, and so we can discuss what we can do, what we cannot do, and also if the historical commission could be a little bit more flexible sometimes, I think that would be great, because all the members agreed with the changes we wanted to make. Just one member didn't agree and put everything down. So that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
for coming. Mr. Von Yurt. You'll be followed by Ted Ellis and Tina Takaya. You signed up together. You can each have 2 minutes apiece. Oh, well, give Mr. Casey your slip. Okay, Mr. Von Yurt.
Dear Madam Mayor, dear council members, thank you for your time. The Accelerator program is not the golden ticket for vacancy issues on State Street. And I heard many times you're trying to figure out to reduce the number by 2%, 10%, whatever it is. I just wanted to remind you, it's a tool. It's a very good tool. It's a good start. I applaud you to give us 6 months to try it out. 6 months is not enough. You need to extend it for at least a year to see the fruits of this program to be harvested. I also encourage you to look at other parts like Milpas Corridor. I think that's a very good indication where this program should be enlarged to. Not to put more stress on the building department because they are very short-staffed, but $52,000 is nothing. Is it 56, 52? It's minute. For the tax revenue, one property, one business could generate for the city, and with all the implication there is. Foot traffic, encouragement. We've been in the news for not the best items, and hopefully we are through the worst and can look forward to better times. What I want to encourage you to not forget, State Street is one of the most prominent streets we have in Santa Barbara. In many pictures, photographs shown all over the world. You've been in the news for a lot of negativity with homeless issue, safety concerns, lately about the fire and mud. I would encourage you to address the issues. It's a puzzle game. There's many little parts to it. You cannot ask a question about decreasing a percentage of vacancy today. Unless you're going to open up the program much farther with institutions who address homeless, who address safety, the police department who needs to do their part, and also addressing issues like we just heard today from different speakers. To have this communication between tenants, prospect tenants, landlords, and the city, I think the one-to-one is very important. An email, which we experienced just the last couple of weeks, could be misread in a couple different ways. And we've been working for 2.5 years on a project on State Street. And I just want to encourage you and the building department to go this direction, to find the time to meet with people and sit down. It would resolve to so many issues and expedite the process. So thank you for all the hard work. You guys do, and I appreciate it, and please enlarge.
Stay there. Mr. Dominguez might have a question for you or a comment.
Yes, thank you for being here. And to cut to the chase, you mentioned the amount of money, the $52,000, and I'm sure your carrying costs or holding costs in a lot of situations are double that. Do you think if there are, seems like there's approximately 20 people who applied to be part of the program since last August, if you split that doing simple math, that's about $2,500 per applicant. Do you think people would be willing to pay the $2,500 to have an extra staff member?
Most definitely. I think they would spend multiple amounts of that. The cost we incurred with delays, it's not just the cost the space is empty. There's a repercussion. We have a bad vibe. It's very hard to get tenants, and we heard that, into Santa Barbara because we are a red flag. It is very difficult to go through the process. It's very difficult, as Charles said, what his vision is for a building, and the different departments can't talk to each other or have difference of opinion, and we've seen that many times around. So able to sit down, and the property owners or the tenants, they are hiring specialists to give them an indication what they're going to get into before they even pull a permit, before they even start with the plans. And I think that's where it needs to start. It is very important to have this initial consultation, and then we don't need to drop the ball. We should have that continuous liaison through a project, who is in charge, who is guidelined, and it should be one person helping them through with questions. And if needed, maybe a sit down. Hopefully, most them can do by emails, but the personal interaction I think is very important. And to charge for it, to offer that service, that's something in the future I would encourage.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Hart?
Did you know about the pre-application review and expedited plan check for a fee process? Did you know that that existed and was an option for you?
Yes and no. For when we started with the project, no, we didn't. We weren't aware of it. 6 months ago, when we heard about the project, that the corridor of State Street would have that, that's the first time we heard about the options.
So at that point, you had already been in the process and had invested time and money, and it didn't seem like at that point that it made as much sense as it would have been at the beginning if that existed. So your decision was passed, and then you're hoping to have more engagement with the staff. That's the one thing I think we've heard 3 times is just the time to sit down with staff in person as opposed to email communications. That's probably the most important thing for you.
Thank you, Councilman Hart. I think to point it down, that would be one I would start today, tomorrow with. And it comes from the leaders. It comes to be told the city staff that it is okay to take that time. And you could redirect them, also encouraging them to do that and showing that you're not going to, withhold the money. I mean, the service has to be paid. I think that would be a great start. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Mr. Ellis, come on up. Are you going to come up together? Sure. That's great. Ms. Snedden has a quick question. So stand by.
I guess it's for staff, but in the report we have dedicated planning staff as downtown liaisons under what's outlined in the Accelerate program. Is that there seems to be a mismatch with what is reported back and then what's here? Are there designated 2 staff that are the designated people to meet with people in the downtown State Street corridor?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Snedden, yes, there are staff dedicated to the Accelerate program in each of the various disciplines that touch on projects. And so that would be in design review, in zoning review, sign review, and building plan review.
Very good. Go ahead.
All right. My name's Ted Ellis, Madam Mayor and council members. My business partner, Tina Takaya. So we actually signed our lease on our place on 29 Cabrillo Boulevard. This was in December of 2016. We've been in plan for checks almost a year now. And one thing I want to just say about State Street is I understand the accelerated program for State Street. I have a lot of visitors, coming to stay here in Santa Barbara. They love coming here. I don't even take people to State Street right now because it's embarrassing. Let's also talk about where our property is. Our building on 29 East Cabrillo is the postcard picture of Santa Barbara. If you see Santa Barbara, especially coming right from the wharf, you're looking right at our building. I respect everything that George and his department do. They are great. I mean, I've been working closely with all of them, but they're definitely understaffed. We talk about this accelerated program and what it can do. Well, we're going to hire about 100 people, in this town. 1, giving jobs, and 2, it's going to also give tax dollars back to, the city of Santa Barbara. The thing that I'm seeing kind of a problem with is the fact that why is the accelerated problem just the norm? Why is it not just go to everywhere in the city? There should be incentives for the landlords and everyone that everyone's talking about. It's like, retail market and those brick and mortar stores are going away. We all know what's happening with Amazon. We all know what's going on. So, I think, they should have some incentive for these smaller groups wanting to come in and say, you know what, I really want to create a business here on State Street. It's expensive rent anyway, but then I have this other roadblock. I'm going to Ventura. So let's, definitely take a close look at that. I know Tina has something to say.
Well, he said a lot of the things I was going to say, but the percentage of vacancy, Madam Mayor and City Council members, should be really for the City of Santa Barbara, not just for the downtown corridor, because as Ted said, just a block over, we have 29, and we have other buildings on the other side, and those are part of what makes Santa Barbara vibrant. I think everybody wants the same thing, a vibrancy in Santa Barbara, and bring it back. The fires also obviously hurt many businesses, and when you get hurt by a fire, it takes not 1 month to come back. You could be busy again, but it takes about 6 months to bring back that 2 weeks of going down. And so many of us did. And so that's a big part of the whole downtown corridor, as well as building a new place. And so I'd like to see perhaps the city is looking more at just not the downtown corridor, but the areas that have been black holes for quite a while. And those people who are actually putting money into their hard-earned money into making it a more vibrant place for Santa Barbara. I've been here since 1970, gone through the home process of remodeling and the business process. I've learned a lot through the processes, and I do think that this is a good meeting to sort of change and get the process going in the right direction. So thank you very much.
Thank you both for coming.
Thanks.
Kathy Duncan, Ray Maboob, and Ken Opplinger. We're having a good discussion today, I think. Ms. Duncan, go ahead.
Good. Well, I have own a building on State Street, and have had the pleasure of working with a team. This is not my job. I'm not in this business. I have another job. It takes all my time. And it's been very, very challenging. And I appreciate some of the suggestions, such as education. Clearly, we were part of the never done this before and lack of education. I think that would go a long ways. We did hire the Brian Cornells. We hired the good certified engineers. And nevertheless, we too have had it this wide and long. So when you ask the question, what do you think it is? What's the one suggestion? I think that there certainly can be a higher level of clarity and transparency. For instance, we'd be told to go and get this, and then we'd come back, and then we'd say, well, we added something else. And then we'd come back. And then we'd say, well, we now want this. And then we'd do that. And then we did have, thank you very much, we finally got our approval, pulled the permits, didn't understand that now the inspector is doing the same thing, and now we're back at the plan. So sure, we made our own errors. I don't get the process. I don't know it. To me, and I may be, and I'm definitely going out on a limb, and I feel like I should have a bag over my face. I think there's a culture. I think there's a cultural issue, I believe. I think on some occasions they perceive business owners or property owners as a little bit of a gotcha game. I may be dead wrong about that. It may be that it's more of I'm not intelligent enough to understand the process. It's potential that should have known when they said that the bill from the concrete company that specified the concrete was not adequate, that we needed to core it, or that later then we would need x-rays, but the x-rays only went down 10 inches, or that we then needed to not core the one footing, but come back and core all 6, because of course this much concrete must have been sold down the road to somebody else and gotten cheaper concrete. I don't know how to do this. We have made a decision. We will never, ever, and we are selling this building. It is empty. It would be occupied by a long-term nonprofit. We will not come back to town. We can't. The emotional turmoil and toil is simply too great. I don't want to stand here and be felt like I'm an evil person just because I saw a cracked beam and we were going to remove and replace that with a glue lamp. And that is the start of my travails. And here we are, I don't know, year and a half, something like that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Maboob, you're next, and Ken Opplinger will be the last speaker.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you for your time. I do want to let you know that Mr. Buell has been doing a great job with me. The communication's been great. But after hearing the stories, I think there's room for improvement. Like anything, we can always do better. I think government should take their approach of looking at a business sometimes. If you have a lot of demand, maybe you just charge a little bit more and you beef up the staff so you can provide the service. And that's the one thing I would ask Mr. Buell to look at is beefing up the staff and maybe subcontracting a lot of the plan check. That way, things get expedited. I think people are willing to pay a lot more, like Mr. Jan Van Yurt mentioned. We're willing to pay more as building owners, as tenants, because time's money. And, it's just costing everyone a lot of money, including the residents in this town. The other thing I want to add for the building department, perhaps to think about, is to have a specialized ADA person that's all they do, because that way potential applicants can speak to that person, and when plan check is going through, it's faster perhaps. So, anyways, that's pretty much it. I mean, I could go on forever. I mean, there's a lot to talk about.
You have 15 seconds more. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Ken Opplinger, come on up. You're from the Chamber of the Santa Barbara Region. Welcome.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, Ken Opplinger. Let me just start by saying that we're very appreciative of the Accelerate program, full stop. So I want to make sure that that's very clear before I make my comments. I think staff has responded to an issue that we had on State Street with an appropriate way to try and deal with this. I thought the presentation today outlined the effort to try and address that core issue, which is the vacancies. And so I'm very appreciative of staff and the work they've done. I think that being said, one of the comments that was made by staff today that I think is extremely important for us to acknowledge is that there has clearly been an effort to ensure that we have an appropriate staffing level. We heard staff talk about the fact that, look, we budgeted for a certain amount of work and we've had like 180% of that come in, and we want to make sure we don't overstaff so that later on and I appreciate that. But this is a fee-for-service side of the business. We're ostensibly paying a fee to the city to be able to get these things done. And in my mind, while I appreciate the desire to not overstaff, I'm less appreciative of it when I think about the fact that by having that be what appears to be one of our primary concerns, we put ourselves in the situation that we are now. If we find ourselves at a point where we have to let staff go, it's unfortunate, but this department ought to be staffed up in a way where we're able to respond to these needs. And if that means bringing additional staff on, if it means that we're going to open up and allow for a broader way to be able to do outside plan check, whatever that is, that capacity should not be the issue. The other part of it is that if it is, and I understand that we are coming out of the last 2 months in a situation where we're going to be dealing with some fiscal issues, but the point is that this city has done a masterful job over the last 5 to 10 years to get itself back on sound financial footing after the last downturn in the economy. Perhaps this is an area that we could do a little investing in, where we can actually say, look, we're going to put a little bit more money into into this department, because as these projects come through, as you heard from some of the speakers, they are going to provide additional revenues to us. And so in the long run, it's an investment in this community. It's a way to be able to increase the fees both for the services that are provided and the tax dollars that come out of these businesses as they go into place. Two quick things to finish. I know I'm over my time, Madam Mayor. One, I don't think that there should ever be a concern about wanting to sit down and get information ahead of time. And so, I think we've explored this idea that we have this ability to do a pre-meeting and that it maybe has not been used at the level that we want. We need to really look at this. Is it because of the fee that's being charged? Is it because these people just don't know about this? I have a sneaking suspicion that every person who came up here today, when they looked sort of in retrospect at all this, would have said, I would have been more than happy to pay a fee ahead of time to have that meeting so I could avoid some of this stuff. Maybe we need to start looking at ways to ensure that those meetings occur. And finally, I do want to express our support for the Coast Village Road idea. I think, though, that because of the situation that we're facing there, I would highly, highly recommend that you not just do this to vacancies, that you do it for all of Coast Village Road, but that we put a time frame on it. So there's a limited time frame, be it 6 months, 9 months, where people can actually use this as a way of trying to drive economic development on Coast Village Road and help to recover from what they've faced. Thank you.
Mr. Dominguez, did you have a question for? No. Okay. Then let me ask you just to hold your thought for a moment. So, Mr. Casey, the staff has some responses to some of the specific comments that we heard today?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'm not going to go point by point based on what we heard this afternoon, but I will just summarize some and touch on some and leave you with kind of a glimpse of what's coming along with the future budget process. I was really surprised to hear about the challenges of an awning color at the Montecito Inn. In checking with staff, we don't have an application in, so I don't know exactly where that conversation has taken place. That was really concerning to me. It seemed rather egregious. And I was able to email staff back at the office, and we're happy. If it's getting hung up just at the counter level on the color of an awning, my goodness, we're able to figure that out, and we can look into that with them. Having done this well over 25 years now, it came as I was a little bit surprised with the number of people that showed up, but I reached out to a number of them, inviting them to come in and to share their experience and to offer constructive criticism. And so in some regards, I brought this on myself, but that's okay, because there's always room for improvement, especially in this type of business. And I know Mr. Casey, having sat in my chair for a number of years as well, he can understand as well. I've spoken with almost all of you numerous times about problematic applications that are coming through, and we really do look to troubleshoot. We really do want to get the permits issued and get the buildings open. Mr. Reed, for example, I have a really good open line of communication with him, and I know he's got a very difficult building he's working with. He's got what's called a lot tie agreement, so he's got a couple of separate lots, and it's just got stuck in the review of how you have buildings that butt up right next to each other and how you allow people and openings in the walls and things like that. It's been a long time, and that project does need to get going, as well as Mr. Von Yurts. And so all these have unique stories, and I'm not trying to make excuses or explain them away entirely, but we understand that there are challenges with them. We will reach out to these individuals, especially the ones that have been lingering on for an extended period of time. It's your discretion as to what you want to do with the program, obviously, and also if you want us to take a look at how we approach vacant storefronts in other parts of the city. We're open to that feedback. Now, with regard to where we're going over the course of the next couple of months and the budget, just last week, the city administrator met with me, my managers and supervisors, and gave us the charge to, number one, be realistic. So we cannot charge more than the cost of providing the service. And so to better identify what that upper level might be, so that we can bring in more revenue, so that we can provide more staff and have a better level of service. Obviously, in the instances that you've heard this afternoon, there's a need for that. And so we are exploring what opportunities might exist. I would also just remind the council that last week we did come to you with a request for additional appropriation, which you approved, to bring in contract plan checkers on the building side. The planning side isn't as easy because we have, as some would describe as a complicated zoning ordinance and design review process. Others would characterize it as being more elegant, and it really does kind of set a bar for the aesthetic that we're looking to have throughout the city. And so it's difficult to bring in a contract planner off the street that hasn't worked for the city before and expect them to come up to speed. We could bring somebody in, but it would take a while to bring them up to speed. And then we might be at a place where the volume of work starts to drop off. So we're sensitive to all these things. And you can look forward to, over the course of the next couple of months, as we go through the budget process, to hear more about that from me, Andrew, and Renee Brooke.
And Madam Mayor, if I could
Mr.
just
Casey?
chime in, and we certainly don't need direction or decision today, but during your comments, if you want to give us a little feedback, I challenge building and planning staff to be more aggressive on the fee increases to increase staff to meet this issue. You heard a number of the speakers talk today that time is money, and so that they would be interested in doing that. So I'm challenging internally as we bring a budget forward that will show a more aggressive, not the 2 to 3% fee increase, but something higher than that will give us the revenue to staff up at a higher level. Would love to kind of get an initial reaction as we go about doing that. It's always a little tug and pull when you look at higher fee increases, because then you might get other people who are going to show up and say you're hitting the mom and pops, hard, and it's difficult. I'm kind of feeling, and I think what we heard from the speakers today is that we got to get ahead of the curve a little bit on this. The volume is so high that maybe we do need to staff up, and the one way we need to do that is by raising the fees a little bit more to give us the revenue to hire the staff.
Okay. Mr. Casey, so for today, we're looking at continuing the Accelerate program. We want to consider extending it to Coast Village Road, and then you'd like us to give you our opinion about going into the budget season, how we might be able to.
And again, Madam Mayor, I'm not looking for a motion or anything like that.
Okay.
We're internally doing that. If we're off base and you don't want us to be looking at raising fees to get more staff, give us a little heads up now. But that's what will be coming to you in the next couple months as we bring the budget forward, because I think we share similar sentiment. I certainly do with some of the comments today that maybe we need to be doing that right now.
Thanks. Mr. Dominguez, you're first.
So to get the discussion started, I'd make a motion to extend the program both in time and in space. Extend it. Are you looking for a particular time frame?
I would suggest another 6 months from today.
Okay, I'd suggest it for another 6 months and adding in Coast Village Road. So that would be my motion.
Okay, that was quick.
And
we might have comments, but go ahead, Mr. Dominguez, finish your thought.
Well, and it seems like it's pretty popular with the council. So the vein of my comments are going to be first, just to thank everyone who's here. Thank you for your very productive comments. It was very constructive to hear what you all had to say and to hear the stories. You were very complimentary of staff. And that leads me to the next point, which is staff has done a great job to try to meet some of the demands of the 21st century in a mid-sized town with retail shrinking. I know Mr. Buell's brought in some initiatives. He was a seasoned person when we hired him, and now he's even more seasoned to the Santa Barbara way. So we're going to look for even more initiatives and out-of-the-box thinking. Particularly, my thoughts in the Accelerate are this is just a starting point. It's a great step, and you guys have executed it to a great degree so far. But I think Accelerate brings us what a lot of high-functioning cities already have citywide. So I'd like to see this kind of the basis for citywide, for Milpas, for the West Side, for Upper State, Delavina, wherever we have a strong commercial district with vacancies. I'd love to see this kind of the baseline. I think we need to flip the old paradigm on its head and make this a public-private partnership. We should incentivize our staff as kind of partners with the businesses. So part of their evaluation is how qualitatively and quantitatively they help the business get through the system. So in a case like a restaurant on state that has multiple agencies, how do we help them get through the process? And I think it pays for itself. I'm not worried about hiring people and having to let them go, because I do think there would be induced demand a few years from now. If a restaurant owner has a successful restaurant and they want to expand and they know that they can do it quickly and efficiently, they're going to bring you more business in the sense of requiring more plan check and design review and ADA services. So I don't think we have to worry if we do a great job, just like any private sector business doesn't have to worry about doing too good of a job. That's the goal. We want people to be asking us to provide them more services. They're paying a fee for service. We can tell that we're doing a good job when people are lining up to get more services, not because it's taking too long, but because they heard that they can get through the system in a way that meets their needs. And we've heard indication today that people are willing to pay full freight for better services. So we hope that that's universal, not just a sample size from here today. And on the other side of the coin, we have been subsidizing it. So the general fund has been subsidizing development. So just as a basic fairness policy, we don't want to be subsidizing private development from the general fund, particularly with the rate sales taxes have been going up and other fees. So, but I do think that local residents and visitors will appreciate an expedited process, because then there's less construction taking place at any one time. The streets will be cleaner, easier to drive around, walk around, bike around. So I think it's a win-win. So those are my thoughts moving forward.
Thank you. Everyone's lights on. Mr. Rouse, and be mindful we have a motion on the floor, but let's hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'll quasi-address the motion in this as well. I was actually in the meeting, the stakeholders, where Mr. Casey came up initially with this idea of an accelerated program. And one of the caveats he gave us was, if we do this, because we were trying to address what we saw as an emergency process on State Street. And he goes, I'm going to need your backing, i.e. the stakeholders in the room, that say, if we do this, we can do this in a contained way, as an initial way, before trying to, because everybody else outside of the district is going to say, well, what about us? And so that was one of the, we tried to see how this worked. At the same time, we were doing the architect's charrette to see if we could repurpose some of the buildings. It was forward thinking, and it was a process that was kind of an experiment. The good part about this is we were sure there weren't going to be that many applications coming out of just the State Street corridor, and it would actually expand and help the rest of the building department with finances. And Mr. Casey committed some initial funds to do this, to kickstart it. That being said, I've had a lot of conversations, especially with Mr. Buell and the rest of the staff here, and they don't take the phrase customer service lightly. They're not flippant about it. They really believe in it. They really want to do this within the limits. But also, I remember a few years back, and I know some of the folks in the room do too, when you could walk into community development and hear crickets. So it is a boom bust situation. And as a culture, within this little business we call the city of Santa Barbara, we don't actually tend to hire and lay off. We tend to do things through attrition. We tend to right-size things. The good part about Plan Check is you can contract out a lot of those services. Planning, like you say, is a little bit different. That's one reason why I was asking the questions about ministerial elements and things that we could simplify. But certainly things like ADA and stormwater are those really complicated things. And you were talking about that one building that Mr. Reed has that has those other complications, and you just can't mitigate those. So government itself, I think Mr. Von Yer brought this up. I mean, we're not going to solve the vacancy problem. All we can do is try to get out of the way and facilitate the ability of the private sector to do it for us in the best way we can possible. A couple of things I think that we could probably do. I think I still believe in kind of an intake triage, a way that we can really inform those people coming to us as applicants, to get them the proper information, to try to do as much of the control as possible on the directions of these processes before it gets into submission. And I don't know, I don't want to tell Mr. Buell how to run his business, but I really believe that from the outside looking in. I've opened a couple of businesses here in town myself. I've remodeled my house. I've gone through that little slice of heaven that all the rest of you have gone through too. So I know what it's like from the customer standpoint as well. And I certainly get to hear from enough of you. I'll probably hear as much about 630 Garden Street as I do about our free-range citizens on State Street. So I know that people are concerned about this. When it comes down to the motion that Mr. Dominguez put forward, I agree with it on the level of can we do this, but I think that we need to be able to expand the revenues to do this. I know that it's a bad time to start tossing money around. Our revenues are going to be down. But I can see it. I don't know if capital reserves is where to go for this, but I think that increasing our ability to do the services in a way that is not just throwing money at it, because government tends to measure success of programs by how much we spend on it. But I really do think that this particular staff is pretty good at leveraging the funds to do the right things. And I would like to see us explore as we go through the budget process, not necessarily as part of the motion today, what it would take to get to that level to ensure that we could get through this time and try to facilitate these permits and these developments, because as somebody, I think Mr. Mahboob said, these things will pay for themselves. I mean, the added activity will pay for itself. Doesn't mean that I'm up for throwing out all the rules and regulations and all the zoning codes going forward. They were really painful to get there, and while everybody in this room may agree on one thing when it comes to parking and zoning, I got a whole bunch of people on the other side that are going to say exactly the opposite. So there's a level playing field to come up, but even when it comes to fee structures. So we can't quite do a one-size-fits-all. But I do agree with doing something to expand the program, to enhance the revenues, certainly to continue the program. That nuts and bolts of the thing. I think we need to go forward. I think it's a very proactive way to try to entice, try to enable the private sector to do what they do best, and hopefully, get to the other side of this little period we're in right now, where we can actually start seeing places filling it. I don't know what the magic bullet is. I know we don't have it as a governmental body. It's going to have to come from the private sector. So what can we do to make it work for you guys? And I think that's the important thing.
Very good. So you do support the motion, which is to continue Accelerate for 6 months and to add Coast Village Road vacant commercial tenant space for
Yes,
6
Madam
months.
Mayor.
Okay, good. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you. I also support the motion. I always I appreciate how much you're doing with so little, and I always like to dream big and then pare it down from there. Like, what would it take to make the Accelerate program the norm for all of Santa Barbara? How much staff would you need to make that really happen?
I'm literally shooting from the hip at this point, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and I would say if you want to have a level of service that matches what we're realizing right now in terms of the turnaround times, and I would venture to guess on the planning side, you'd probably need a couple more planners, one and a half to two additional planners, and on the building side, Mr. Stuffler, I know that we've got the contract, but
That's your big number? 1.5 to 2? Like, that's your dream big number?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sneddon, I, as much as I would love to give you an answer, I am not prepared to give. I could bring that back to council. I could give you the answer, but right now, it would be such a wild guess. I would be embarrassed if I was wrong.
Okay, thank you. And
Ms.
I just
Sneddon, let me suggest that we're coming into the budget season, right? And that's the time for those big dreams and medium-sized dreams, maybe. And you can let us know then. Did someone else have a comment? Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Sneddon, please.
And then just, is there a person who's sort of like an integration ambassador among all these different HLCs, signs, planning? I mean, we get this same question from residents also who they've gone to different commissions and gotten different feedback. Is there an integration among them?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sneddon, there is. There's a number of them that are informal liaisons. However, Lonnie Cassidy, who's our plan check inspection supervisor for building and safety, is probably the most relied upon contact for building permit applications. She's so busy trying to handle the 130% of our workload, the over allocation of our staff, that it's difficult for her to find the time to do that. So we need to sit down and do some thinking about how can we really truly provide the service without over allocating ourselves, so that it can be predictable and dependable and part of our normal practice.
Mr. Friedman and then Mr. Hart.
Well, I want to thank staff for all your work leading up to this, and then also all the public comment today. It was very informative. I think it was a healthy discussion for our community going forward. I'll be supporting the motion as well. I had just a couple of comments. One is as we're going forward and looking at, if we could look at some of our internal processes in particular for the pre-application review, just trying to understand why that hasn't been utilized more. Just seeing if it's more outreach we need to just kind of looking at that going forward. And then the other is just the feedback, because what I'm hearing feedback from the applicants on how we can improve and maybe tracking that and just constantly, which I think we do that, but just be cognizant of that. And one of the things I'm hearing tonight, and it was the number one from multiple speakers, is the ability to have that face-to-face interaction. And I'll bring it up at my other job, is we're known for talking to people to the point where they say, don't you have to get back to work? And what I learned on the first day was the management actually told us, if you're talking to the customer, don't go back to work, just talk with them, because that's part of your job, and that's part of what facilitates business and just interactions and trust that gets built. So anything we can do to look at that issue in particular on why there's this disconnect of applicants trying to have sit-down meetings and not being able to, I think would go a long ways towards as we're moving forward on this. And the last is just the higher level of clarity and transparency, which goes hand in hand. I think that could be resolved with those face-to-face meetings. And I know we're doing that, but anything George mentioned, we're always looking to improve. And I think that's an area that I'm hearing tonight that we could really focus on. And with that, I'll be supporting the motion and appreciate everyone's comments today.
Thank you. Councilmember Hart.
Well, I'm going to be supporting the motion as well, and I really appreciate all the different comments from my colleagues about this subject. This is complex, and it's difficult to really do the big picture today. That's why I think we're taking this in bites and saying we're going to extend the program and we're going to expand the geographic area. But I do think there is a little bit of misunderstanding about what this program is. This is not streamlining the city's development review process. This is allocating staff resources to specific areas of town and moving them ahead of the line. And there is a consequence to the people that aren't in those geographic areas in the time and the available staff resources. So that's the truth of the matter. And so there are winners and losers by this decision. And I think what we're saying as a community and a council and as staff is that given the sensitivity of these two specific areas, that's a trade-off that we're willing to do. There is this other process that we have made available to applicants to do pre-application review for a fee. And no one has taken advantage of that. That speaks to me that there is price sensitivity about fees. If it wasn't that way, everyone would do that and they would get more service. But they're not doing that. And the reason they're not doing that is because they don't want to pay more fees. So it isn't fair or reasonable for us today to say everybody's willing to pay more fees to get more service. There may be people, particularly people who've had trouble with complicated, complex planning properties who, in hindsight, would gladly pay the fee, but it isn't apparent today that we're creating a structure that gives them the path to know that in advance of the process. Ms. Duncan's comments were very powerful because there's somebody who isn't a professional in this system who got creamed by the difficulty and complexity of being involved in this system. And that's part of the complexity of what we have as a process for the city. And that is part of why we have really high standards. But it's really difficult when it applies to specific people, and it doesn't seem to make sense on a project-by-project basis. But Councilmember Rouse said it really clearly. You know, when you play around with parking requirements, there is another half of the equation to this conversation that we try to find a balance point for. And a number of the people, you know, who said, can't you be more flexible, are speaking directly to that. They want more flexibility on the parking standards. We're not here in this venue here today hearing from the people who say, no, we can't do that. There's a reason why those parking standards exist. So I think the best news is that, as everybody has said, you can always do better, and we're trying to do better, and we're going to do better. And having that staff time available to meet with people and to talk person to person is probably the most important thing, because it isn't possible to describe these complex interrelated things in emails. It just isn't. And that is probably the most important thing, I think, for staff to take away from this, is that more time spent with people in person is going to generate more efficiency for the system. And we need to build in the money to make sure that you have the staff time to do that.
Thank you. So I support the motion, and I just need to acknowledge that what happened on Coast Village Road and in Montecito in general was extraordinary. People are using the word biblical. So yes, please, let's extend some help to Coast Village Road. But I'm also hearing that it's an accelerate program, meaning for right now, let's do focus on these two areas, because then we take away we can't extend it to the entire city right now until we have a budget discussion. And I'd like to challenge the city, the downtown organization, and the chamber. How do we let business entrepreneurs know that there are difficult properties in this town? They're old buildings. They're not ADA compliant. There might be some parking challenges, the stormwater issue. And publicize the fee-based consultations to those folks. Maybe we can do more at the city. We have our city TV and other ways to let people know not to sign that lease, not to buy that property until you've heard from the city. These are some issues that you might have to deal with, because I think once they sign the lease, then they're on the hook. So we're trying to be helpful. So it looks like we're ready for this motion, and with a general direction to you all to, during the budget season, to discuss how we can be better at processing these applications for our business community. So are we all good with the motion? Will you take a roll call, please?
Councilmember Friedman?
Yes.
Councilmember Dominguez? Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Hart?
Aye.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Yes.
Mayor Murillo?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
That was anonymous. Very good. Thank you all for being here. Stay in touch with us, please. We do care about your issues, so thanks. And we're moving on to the next item, which is council liaison assignments. Anybody ready to report what they've been up to in the last week? Mr. Rouse.
Well, it wasn't exactly a liaison assignment, but I did go to the athletic roundtable last night. Mr. Darian was there, and a fabulous presentation, but also just a great local organization that recognizes and celebrates kids in sports. And Paul Westphal came and gave a talk, but it was very cool to see the San Marcos High championship basketball team and some of the other soccer teams, some of the women's teams that were there. Just a great organization, a great little piece of Santa Barbara.
And Mr. Rouse, what was that event we went to? The UCSB will host the National Men's Soccer Championship.
That's right. Yeah,
what is that? Tell us.
Yeah, well, Tim Bonsteig did the presentation, our coach of the Gaucho soccer team. And the NC2A Championship tournament is coming this December to the UCSB Stadium, and which will be fabulous. And plus, on top of that, there's going to be at the Santa Barbara Polo Field. Before that, there's going to be like 96 youth teams and 100 other. There's just going to be a ton of people coming into town based on soccer and based on these NC2A championship tournaments. So the top 4 teams in the nation will decide who the champion is here at UCSB. So hopefully they can fill up Harder Stadium with all sorts of folks, and hopefully it'll hold up because it's an old stadium. But it'll be a fabulous thing for Santa Barbara.
Not our jurisdiction, right? The stadium.
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Sneddon.
Let's see, I went on a tour of MTD with Jerry Estrada. That was really great just to get a visual on all of the charging stations and some of the parking issues and operational issues they're having there. Attended Civil Service Commission meeting. They are looking for a commissioner. They need a commissioner. So that's been open. It continues to be open. So members of the public should consider Civil Service Commission.
Mr. Friedman.
Yesterday, along with my fellow council members, attended the ribbon cutting for the Grace Homes, and it's a terrific project with former Grace Lutheran Church, and it's serving 57 lower-income seniors. Great location and services. The tour of the apartments was beautiful and really heartwarming. And some of them are going to be veterans that are going to be housed there and homeless and services on site. So it's exactly the type of project that our community needs going forward. I also attended the monthly Community Action Commission meeting, and the interesting note is related to 211, and they now implement that and fund it. But during the fire and the debris flow, 211 received basically their entire year of calls within that stretch. So their budget for the whole year is basically gone, and it's raising capacity issues for them on whether or not they are the appropriate agency to be dealing with this, because a lot of these are emergency calls, and they were literally the lifeline. People would call 211 to figure out if they're in the evacuation zone, mental health services, everything that came up during both the fire and the debris flow. So they're working with the county and also Office of Emergency Management to better understand how, especially when we're dealing with emergencies, how 211 can be a partner in it, but also have the most accurate information, and funding going forward is going to be a major challenge for it. So stay tuned on that. Those discussions will be coming.
There'll be a funding request for that, I'm sure. Mr. Dominguez, go ahead.
I attended the Housing Authority Commission, and I would just say the most impressive thing was the Grace Village opening and the impact that will have, particularly on low-income seniors.
Thank you. I attended a peace ceremony at UCSB with our Native American community. It was very uplifting. A lot of peace activities going on at this time. The State of the City address went fine. I'm proud of that. We do it every year. Don't miss out. Oh, and it'll be on our website for people who missed it. And you don't have an hour in the evening. Go ahead and take a look. The Women's Political Committee had a luncheon with Los Angeles County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, who's an inspirational speaker and a leader on healthcare for all. And so I'd like to congratulate the Women's Political Committee on that event. And that looks like it's it for our reports. Madam Clerk, we have a closed session item.
Item number 12, subject conference with labor negotiator as described in agenda item number 12.
Okay, and so we'll adjourn to closed session. Thank you.